Chapter 688. From the mouths of the samurai and monks who chased after him, Zhuefeng had some knowledge of this weird place. What made him curious was that some memories of the original owner of the dog demon's body would occasionally emerge. As a half-demon beast, not only was he ostracized by his own kind, but he was also hostile to humans. He had been wandering in the outside world without any friends. Gradually, he developed an eccentric character. This Inuyasha. Zhuefeng looked at the snow-white hair that he did not have and muttered to himself, "He is so similar to me." Zhuefeng had a feeling that the reason why he became what he was now might be because of such a similar experience. After learning from the samurai that this place was near Famine Mountain, some of the information received while watching the movie became clear at the same time. It was just that when Zhuefeng was watching the movie, he had been paying attention to Zixing. He didn't pay much attention to what the movie said. Only at the beginning, he vaguely remembered that the names of places such as Unripe Rice Village were mentioned. He was not like Mo Xiaofei, who saw the follow-up plot on the internet. Naturally, he knew nothing about the content of the movie. Inuyasha seems to be planning to go to Unripe Rice Village too. Wind-chasing wolf lay on the branch of an ancient tree, crossing his legs and putting his hands behind his head. He looked at the blue sky and white clouds, slowly emptying his mind in a daze. He found that in this way, some memories of Inuyasha would emerge more. Thinking about it, Zhuefeng took out a book from his arms and opened it. There were a bunch of words on it that he couldn't understand, so later he directly covered his face with the book and fell asleep. No, I'm going to find Zixing. Zhuefeng jumped off the ancient tree at once, and then stuffed the book into his clothes. He didn't know the origin of this book, but when he took over Inuyasha's body, he had been carrying it with him. Maybe it was something important. Anyway, it was not a burden to carry it. Since the Unripe Rice Village that I didn't pay much attention to, maybe the Purple Star Village should be remembered as well. Anyway, it's nearby. I might as well go and take a look. He was completely oblivious to his current appearance as a half-demon. In the cities of his original world, demons were already used to walking freely on the streets in their human forms. In front of a tea house on the pipeline, Zhuefeng smelled the aroma of food and remembered that he hadn't eaten for a long time. He immediately felt hungry. He hurried forward and looked at the slightly plump lady boss. "Is there anything to eat here?" While teaching those warriors and monks who were chasing after him a lesson, he also obtained some money from them. Yonkai then remembered that Purple Star didn't seem to like him taking advantage of the situation, so he simply generously handed over the money. Unexpectedly, when the slightly plump lady boss saw a barefoot, white-haired man in a crimson robe suddenly appear in front of her, her body stiffened. She shivered and cried out in horror, "Monster! Wait, don't eat me. Don't eat me." Not only the lady boss, but even the many food boxes in the tea house were hiding in horror at this time. They hugged their heads and crouched in the corner. Zhuefeng stretched out his hand and wanted to say something. In the end, he sighed. He shook his head and simply pretended not to see the fear of these humans. Instead, he casually sat on the bench in front of the tea house and reached out his hand to pick up a stack of different colored dumplings on the cabinet and began to eat. As he ate, Zhuefeng couldn't help but think with interest. But he was still young. When he was wandering in other cities, he had more than one prank of showing his monster characteristics in front of humans. At that time, many humans were so scared that they screamed. At that time, he just felt interesting and had the pleasure of revenge. Later, when he came to Kelowna and settled down in the city where Shinryu was squatting, he didn't do this kind of thing anymore because it was forbidden by the Lord Long. The people seemed to not know about the existence of monsters. Unlike this world, there were legends of monsters and even stories of gods. It was said that there would be gods coming from time to time. Demons were even able to wander around openly. If one day, Zhuefeng said to himself, "We can also walk openly on the street without disguising ourselves. We can do the same things as humans, go to the amusement park together, watch movies together, eat together, and don't even have to disguise ourselves. We can go to school directly and finally go to work together. What would it be like?" After finishing a plate of dumplings, Zhuefeng was unexpectedly full. He shook his head in self-mockery. What he was thinking of, perhaps even Shinryu in Kelowna couldn't do it, let alone a little monster like him. He simply stood up and put some money on the bench. Looking at the humans who were still curled up in fear, he felt that his idea was unrealistic. After all, not everyone was like Brother Fei, who tried his best to save him even if he knew that he was a monster. Here's the money. I promised others that I won't eat and dash. Besides, I don't eat humans. Lady Boss, your food tastes good. After a long time, the people in the tea house came out nervously, but the white-haired monster in the red robe had already disappeared. Looking at the bag of money on the bench, the Lady Boss picked it up inconceivably. A monster that doesn't eat humans. He pays for his meal. Is there really such a monster? But thinking of the legends of monsters and the stories of monsters eating humans everywhere, the Lady Boss shuddered. How could there be such a monster? If so, was he still a monster? The Lady Boss suddenly broke out in a cold sweat, thinking that the money in the bag was an ominous thing. Afraid of being cursed by evil, she threw the bag into the stove at once. She didn't feel relieved until the bag was completely burned. She even felt that it was not safe enough. How about going to the nearby temple tomorrow to find an eminent monk to exorcise the evil? Bamboo's family was the most common small village family. In a house built with wooden planks, Emo Xiaofei, who was not used to kneeling, directly sat on the floor and ate the food prepared by this family. Sir Samurai, you gave us gold coins. We should at least prepare white rice for you. Unfortunately, our village didn't have a good harvest this year. The person who said this was Bamboo's father, Shizuro, with a look of fear and trepidation. These people were really in awe of the samurai. This was probably a kind of culture, right? And Mo Xiaofei didn't mind. While eating the crude food, he muttered, "Where is the shrine where the witch lives? It's on that mountain, halfway up the mountain." Shizuro quickly opened the window, propped it up with a wooden stick, and then pointed to a mountain in front of him. "Well, Mr. Shizuro, can I stay here tonight?" Mo Xiaofei thought for a while and asked directly. Shizuro looked at his wife and daughter with a difficult expression. Finally, he gritted his teeth and nodded, saying in a trembling voice, "Okay, Sir Samurai, I'll let Bamboo prepare it for you." Chapter 689. Being in this movie world, Mo Xiaofei was the kind of person who had the script in his hand. It was a pity that his script was only half finished. The Christmas Eve outing was supposed to be sweet, but Mo Xiaofei didn't expect that the class monitor, who looked gentle and quiet, would suggest to watch the movie Spirit of the Pen. She said that she had been looking forward to it for a long time, but none of the girls in the class were willing to accompany her to watch it. This didn't fit the style at all, but Mo Xiaofei agreed in the end. Then, he roughly read the synopsis when he bought the tickets, and, at the same time, played the movie review. This was something that almost all movie watchers would do. The synopsis only briefly talked about the plot, but didn't mention the final ending. As for the movie review, Mo Xiaofei didn't have time to read the ending of the story. After all, it was just a preview. If he knew the ending in advance, it would be meaningless to watch the movie. Thinking of this, after a simple shower, Mo Xiaofei lay down in the room arranged by Kizaru's family. Of course, this kind of simple and crude house was not very comfortable. The class monitor should know more. After all, she said that she had been looking forward to it for a long time. At this time, there was a soft knock on the door. Mo Xiaofei curiously asked, "Who is it?" "Master Kojiro, it's me. Bamboo." Bamboo's voice came. As for the so-called Kojiro, it was the name of the original owner of this body that Mo Xiaofei was using at this time. He saw from the household registration certificate in this body's belongings. The full name was Sasaki Kojiro, which Mo Xiaofei couldn't help but ridicule. Was there also Miyamoto Musashi? But he didn't know anything about this Sasaki Kojiro. As for the katana he carried with him, it was not the sharp sword that was taller than a person in his impression. Therefore, Mo Xiaofei was not sure if this Kojiro was the powerful swordsman he knew. "Oh, come in. What's the matter?" Mo Xiaofei tidied up his clothes and sat up from the quilt. He saw Bamboo slowly push open the wooden door of the room. She was still kneeling in the corridor outside, and there was a tray with teacups next to her. Tea delivery? Mo Xiaofei was stunned and then shook his head secretly. It seemed that the warriors in this era were indeed a privileged class. Even as a wandering warrior, these civilians respected and feared him. Through the original plot introduction, Mo Xiaofei knew that there was also a warrior in Unripe Rice Village. He was a warrior who owned his own fief. The entire Unripe Rice Village and even the nearby fields belonged to this warrior. In short, he was the landlord. Mo Xiaofei pondered for a while before looking at Bamboo. Come in. I have something to ask you. If you remember correctly, this Bamboo seemed to have appeared in a movie review. Mo Xiaofei did not pay attention to whether there was bamboo on the poster or not. But since it was mentioned in the movie review, it was at least a character in the plot. Mo Xiaofei had just entered the Unripe Rice Village and had already encountered the characters related to the plot. He felt that his start seemed to be good. My apologies. Bamboo still had a reserved look. She carried the plate and came in on her knees. Finally, she put the teacup in front of Mo Xiaofei and lowered her head. Relax. Mo Xiaofei tried to be polite. He was just a student. He really couldn't adapt to the feeling brought by this so-called privilege. Bamboo doesn't dare to be rude. Forget it. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. Let me ask you, is the samurai family in Unripe Rice Village called Nagato? Bamboo was slightly surprised. Sir Kojiro, is he a friend of Master Nagato? Mo Xiaofei did not answer, but asked instead, let me ask you again. Has Master Nagato's younger brother come back? It turns out that Sir Kojiro also knows Sir Saburo. Bamboo seemed to be more curious about the origin of this Kojiro. Sir Saburo Nagato has returned a month ago. I heard that he was injured in the frontline battle and temporarily went home to recuperate. It is an honor to be able to contribute to the country, even if he is injured. Mo Xiaofei was amused. How is this Saburo Nagato injured in the front line? In fact, he seemed to be a deserter before the war and sneaked back. However, he encountered bandits on the way. After losing the battle, he was injured and fled again. He came back here in dire straits, but he claimed that he had gained merits in the front line. Now he was injured, so he went home to recuperate. As for the reward, he should be able to receive it after the war was over. Such rhetoric spread in Unripe Rice Village, and the people who didn't know the truth believed it. They praised it every day. It was unknown if Saburo Nagato would be shy or not. But if Saburo Nagato came back, that is to say, the storyline officially began. After Mo Xiaofei inquired about the location of Nagato's house from Bamboo, he said, I'm tired today. Let's call it a day. His original intention was to let Bamboo take off by herself and then leave quietly at night. Then, he would first go to Nagato's house to see the situation. He would go up the mountain tomorrow morning to meet the Miko of the shrine. Unexpectedly, Bamboo's shoulders trembled slightly at this moment. She gritted her teeth as if she had made up her mind. She slowly turned around and got up, but she did not leave. The girl suddenly untied her belt, and her clothes slipped off her shoulders at once. Although this girl's clothes were coarse linen, and her face skin could only be regarded as ordinary, the skin under the clothes was whiter than snow. She was also 14 or 15 years old. For a young and vigorous man, Mo Xiaofei felt that his physiology was very normal. When he suddenly saw such a scene, his breathing became heavier subconsciously. However, his spirit was far beyond ordinary people after all. He had a sincere heart that even the boss and Kelowna Shinryu praised. He quickly recovered his calmness. Mo Xiaofei tilted his head. He had some guesses about Bamboo's behavior. Recalling Zizuru's weird expression during the meal, he guessed that this honest guy must have taken his request to stay here for the night, as this was what he meant. Go out. I don't need these. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. If a girl doesn't cherish herself, no one will cherish you. Tell your father that I don't mean that. I just want to rest for a night. Tell him not to do unnecessary things. Mo Xiaofei's knowledge gradually became richer. He was no longer as extreme as before, setting up a private prison to punish those who did evil. But he would also quietly take action and do a lot of good deeds that suited heroes. If it weren't for a nameless firefighter wandering in the darkness of the city and stopping a lot of crimes, Police Officer Ma, who was known as a sharpshooter, wouldn't be so idle to shout about the world being peaceful and play minesweeper in the office all day long. It seemed that Kishiro didn't simply misunderstand. He probably really regarded himself as a wandering samurai and had a little intention. If he took a fancy to bamboo and settled down with the ability of a wandering samurai, he might be able to get a reward and own a fief. At the very least, he could become a diner of a noble family that was nobler than the Nagato family. It was much better than those hot-headed young men in the village. From then on, his family could live a happy life. Ah, hearing this, Bamboo suddenly turned her head. The girl's face had already turned red because of this action, but now she became frightened because of Mo Xiaofei's decisiveness. She quickly panicked. Master Kojiro, do you think Bamboo is not qualified to serve you? No, I have someone I like. Mo Xiaofei shook his head and his stance was very firm. Let's treat tonight's incident as if it didn't happen. Unexpectedly, Bamboo seemed to be unable to listen to such rejection. Her face turned pale, and she suddenly did something that Mo Xiaofei couldn't react to. Regardless of how messy her unbuttoned clothes were, Bamboo directly rushed into Mo Xiaofei's arms. Hey! Mo Xiaofei was suddenly shocked. He wanted to use his telekinesis to reject her, but he promptly thought that Bamboo's weak body couldn't withstand this kind of impact. He could only stand up quickly, breaking away from Bamboo's hands, turned around, and said in a deep voice, "If you don't go out, I will leave tonight." Sir Little Jiro, Bamboo was sobbing. She stuck her body to Mo Xiaofei's back and hugged him, saying sadly, "Can you please pamper Bamboo for one night? Bamboo don't want to die." Mo Xiaofei gave a start. What was this situation? But this time, Mo Xiaofei frowned. He didn't have time to ask about Bamboo, but just whispered, "Sorry, you can sleep for a while." Spirit collision. With a thought, Bamboo's entire body suddenly became soft. This kind of spirit collision was one of the abilities that he had developed through the long Shiroa's training. He picked up the cup, closed his eyes, and hurriedly covered the Bamboo with it. He didn't care about this place anymore, picked up the katana, and quickly left here. In ancient times, this kind of village, other than the stars and the moon, there was no public lighting at all. But even without a lantern, Mo Xiaofei could still see very clearly with his telekinesis entwined in his eyes. In the vast night, there were two figures floating on the hillside. Both of them were young and beautiful women in crimson clothes. This place is very strange, even vaguely ominous. I'm afraid it's the place mentioned by the Godmaster, Amaterasu Amakami. One of the women frowned at this time, seeming to be observing the surrounding environment. What do you think? The other one, who was called Amaterasu Amakami, nodded with a dignified look. Amaterasu Amakami, I have the same opinion as you. These two, together with the other one, Amaterasu Amakami, were called the three goddesses of Zongzhou. They were born from a mist that Amaterasu Amakami blew out when she broke Su Susanu's sword of Tatsuka and put it into her mouth. In theory, they were the children of Amaterasu Amakami. At this time, Amaterasu Amakami said with a worried face, "The God Master has come to the country of darkness to look for Madame Tsukuyami and ordered us to temporarily stop our actions in the country of darkness. Now, he asked you and me to come to this remote place to investigate, but I don't know the reason." Amaterasu Amakami said, "I'm afraid that the God Master has reached some kind of agreement with Madame Tsukuyami. When the three noble sons compete, there has never been a party with complete superiority. If Lord Tsukuyami and Madame Tsukuyami join forces this time, then Lord Susanoo will definitely be defeated." Amaterasu Amakami nodded. Apparently, she agreed with the speculation of Amaterasu Amakami, one of the three goddesses, but I don't know what secrets there are in this unripe rice village. With your and my divine power, we can't see through it. This village seems to be shrouded in a layer of fog, and there is a vague, evil intention lurking. I don't know who dares to peep. Jiuji Ming coldly snorted. Light suddenly appeared on his palm within the darkness. He waved his hand towards a certain spot below the mountain slope. Immediately, a strong wind blew. It was incomparably ferocious, causing the ground to split apart. At this moment, a figure flew out from below and landed in front of the two goddesses. Then, he looked at them with a strange expression. Samurai. Amaterasu Amakami frowned and looked up and down. She saw a rather young and handsome man. However, this samurai could dodge Amaterasu Amakami's follow-up attack. He was quite capable. In this Yin Wuyue world, a powerful samurai could deal with evil monsters and great monsters. Then, as one of the three goddesses, she would not be too surprised if he had some skills. I don't mean any harm. I just want to ask something. May I know who you two are? This person was Mo Xiaofei. His huge spirit power suddenly sensed two unusual breaths that suddenly appeared in this unripe rice village. He was looking for clues here, so he naturally wanted to take a look. I'm Amaterasu Amakami. I'm Amaterasu Amakami. The two goddesses said indifferently one after another. In their opinion, as long as they reported their god name, these samurai would naturally kneel down. They also happened to have something to ask this wild samurai who suddenly appeared in the village. What? Say it again. Mo Xiaofei scratched his head. He was quite good at history, but that was also the history of his country. For this Yin Wuyue world similar to District 11, he really couldn't figure it out. We're the three goddesses of Zone 2. Amaterasu Amakami snorted heavily at this time. Goddess? Mo Xiaofei was taken aback, then nodded. If she's a goddess, she should know a lot of things. In that case, I don't need to find the witch in the shrine on the mountain. Mo Xiaofei was overjoyed. He came forward without thinking. Madam Goddess, just in time. I have something to ask. I'm not here originally. But he just took a few steps forward. Before he got close to the two goddesses, Amaterasu Amakami was furious. How dare you? How dare a mortal approach and blaspheme the god's power? Amaterasu Amakami's eyes narrowed. A god's power directly pressed down. At the same time, she stretched out her hand and pressed the void. Another invisible force pressed down on Mo Xiaofei. Unable to withstand such an attack, Mo Xiaofei instinctively raised his hand and waved, dispelling the huge force that was suppressing him. Then, he felt as if something had pierced into his head, causing him to frown and shout out loud. A huge spirit power gushed out, directly colliding with the god's power. The spirit power was like a sharp sword, shattering the god's power in an instant. Amaterasu Amakami's face changed dramatically at this time. A trace of red flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her eyes were full of disbelief. A mortal samurai was so powerful that he could directly cut off the god's power? Who are you? Amaterasu Amakami exclaimed. Are these two really goddesses? Chapter 690. Mo Xiaofei didn't want to fight with the two goddesses. He didn't want to have any conflict with them. The reason why he resisted was because they attacked him first. It was just that the behavior of starting a fight at the slightest disagreement was not in line with his beliefs. Therefore, even though he had some complaints about the other party attacking him the moment he came up, he did not really take it to heart. If he was in the other party's shoes, if something of his was suddenly broken, the first thing he would think of would probably be a self-protection mechanism. Thinking in their shoes was something that Mo Xiaofei realized when he came in. This way, he wouldn't be impulsive and become more rational. There was only one step between bullying the weak and being a real expert. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry. Mo Xiaofei nodded and then took a step back. It could be seen that the two goddesses were very disgusted with strangers who approached them casually. The two Zanzi goddesses quickly exchanged a look. They were born almost at the same time. They were not only born with powerful abilities, but also a strong tacit understanding. This human martial art had a special power that could ignore the power of gods. It could even injure one of them in a short period of contact. It was a very serious matter to injure a god. Although Yin Wuyue claimed to have 8 million beings, in the eyes of the three Zanzi goddesses, the so-called 8 million was just an imaginary number. Everything in Yin Wuyue could become a god, but most of them were just some weak individuals. It was just that mortals were ignorant and were in awe of any ability that was slightly beyond their own. Therefore, the three goddesses did not find it strange that human warriors, or powerful monks, or witches could cause trouble for the gods and monsters. However, it was impossible for human warriors to fight against the gods who truly possessed divine power. The real gods had divine power. This was the reason why mortals were in awe of them and couldn't resist. Just like their god, Amaterasu Amakami. When Amaterasu was angry, no one in Takamagara dared to offend her. That was the real, earth-shattering power. But the warriors of the mortal world were able to cut off the true power of the gods. If the warriors of the mortal world were able to grasp this special power, then wouldn't it be Amaterasu Amakami asked the two of them to come to this remote mountain village to monitor? Could it be because of the emergence of this strange power that could shake the foundation of the gods' rule? Who are you? After a quick exchange, Argentine looked at Emo Xiaofei and asked in a low voice. Kojiro, Sasaki Kojiro. Emo Xiaofei thought for a while and felt that these two goddesses were not very reliable. He decided to be cautious and only provided the name of the original owner of this body. Oh, it turned out to be young Master Kojiro. Ajin Island's Jiming nodded, then said in a serious tone, "Just now I was very rude." But in his heart, he was already thinking that when he returned, he would activate his own divine subordinates and inquire about the origin of this samurai, Sasaki Kojiro. A samurai who could cut off Kimui should not be a nameless person. What the hell is with the Kojiro Palace? The difference in this second made Emo Xiaofei a little stunned. However, in his impression, Yin Wuyue's world seemed to be highly compatible with District 11. Both of them probably paid attention to etiquette like this, right? No, I'm not right either. Emo Xiaofei shook his head. He didn't know how to respond. As the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. No, we also made mistakes. The situation wasn't clear. Although it was a proper reaction, we made a move first. Now that I think about it, it's fortunate that it's young Master Kojiro. If it's just an ordinary person, I'm afraid it's already in danger. After all, we still mishandled it. In fact, it's also wrong for me to hide and eavesdrop from the beginning. The two sides didn't start a war. Instead, they kept apologizing. I don't know what's wrong with this script. Emo Xiaofei finally shook his head. He really didn't have the confidence to defeat this ingrained concept of etiquette. He simply said, "Lord Goddess, I wonder why you two came to Unripe Rice Village." Ajin Island's Ji Ming said slowly, "We passed by and found that there seems to be something strange about Unripe Rice Village, so we checked it out. I don't know why young Master Kojiro. There seems to be no mention in the spoilers and comments that there will be gods in the story." Emo Xiaofei frowned. Did I really take the wrong script? I got separated from my companions. Emo Xiaofei thought and said, "Because I passed by Unripe Rice Village, I intend to inquire here. Because of the weather, I will temporarily stay in Unripe Rice Village tonight." I see. Ajin Island's Ji Ming nodded. Next to him, Ji Ming suddenly asked, "Young Master Kojiro, I wonder if the companion you mentioned is as powerful as you?" Emo Xiaofei rubbed his chin and said subconsciously, "He should be more powerful than me, right?" He had seen Zhuefeng fight with his current teacher, Kelowna Shinryu. Although Zhuefeng seemed to be unable to use that kind of power for the time being, God knew when Zhuefeng would suddenly use Seed and beat everyone. In that case, Emo Xiaofei knew that he couldn't defeat Seed, so it wasn't a mistake to use "should be more powerful than me" to describe it. The three goddesses didn't think that the samurai's companion would be a real monster with a strong background. They only thought that the companion was also a powerful samurai. More powerful than this guy who cut off Kamui? Jiming couldn't help but ask cautiously, "Young Master Kojiro, do you have many companions?" "There are quite a lot." Emo Xiaofei wasn't afraid. Anyway, it seemed that his soul had transmigrated here. His information with the original world must be cut off. If Zhuefeng used Seed, Emo Xiaofei knew that he couldn't defeat him, let alone his teacher, Long Shua. As for the source of his ability, the boss, this was a problem that Emo Xiaofei had never thought about, and he didn't intend to think about it. And Mo Xiaofei always felt that every time his teacher mentioned the boss, although she always called him a profiteer, she felt a little lacking in confidence. Sure enough, the samurai in the human world had mastered the terrifying power to shake the foundation of the god's rule. The two goddesses quickly exchanged glances again. Although they didn't know if Kojiro was telling the truth when he said that he was just passing by, if it had nothing to do with Amaterasu Amakami ordering them to monitor the secrets of Unripe Rice Village, then this discovery would be an unexpected surprise. It might even be more important than the secrets hidden in Unripe Rice Village. After all, it was related to the foundation of the gods. I have to report. I have to go back and report immediately. But at the same time, I have to hold on to this human samurai and get more information from him. With just a simple glance, Kojiro Haim and Ojinjima Haim had already decided what to do. Ojinjima Haim nodded at this moment. I still have some things to deal with. I'll leave first. Kojiro Haim nodded in agreement. I'll wait here for sister's return. Ojinjima Haim was surrounded by a faint white light and went away. And Mo Xiaofei glanced at it and felt that he could achieve this speed. It was just that he didn't have such a holy light special effect. Your Highness Kojiro, I wonder if you can accompany me to explore the secrets of Unripe Rice Village. Kojiro Haim suddenly issued an invitation at this time. Mo Xiaofei thought for a while and agreed directly. But can you wait? Mo Xiaofei said seriously at this time, I still have some things to deal with, but I will be back here soon. It's okay. I'll wait here for your Highness Kojiro to return. Kojiro Haim bowed slowly. Apart from her identity as a goddess, she looked like a delicate woman. After all, a goddess was the embodiment of beauty. This kind of beauty was mostly rooted in human imagination. Taisetsu tried to deepen the communication between himself and Zhang Lu. God knows when Arex is going to make a move. Going against the god of a world, this kind of thing sounded ridiculous. Taisetsu naturally felt a little guilty, but he wasn't the kind of person who would back down. Then, he had to be more prepared. Unripe Rice Village. Such words were probably written on the stone tablet in front. Taisetsu didn't know this language, but the boss and the servant girl stopped here. The name of the village was mentioned before, so it should be correct. On another hillside, Yi looked at the village surrounded by crisscrossed fields below. It was summer in the Yin Wuyua world at this time. It was still sultry in the middle of the night. At this time, from a stream below, fireflies flew out like glowing dandelions dotting the hillside. The paddy field was as calm as a mirror. Because there was no wind, it was even calmer. They reflected the stars and the moonlight, and they were also filled with fluorescence like the galaxy. At this time, a streamer cut through the night sky and went away. Boss Luo withdrew his gaze with a faint smile on his face. You have matured a lot. Yes. Yu Yi smiled. Taisetsu looked at the streamer in the distance and said thoughtfully, Boss, is that a god? He felt that he could deal with it. Zhang Lu also sent a disdainful thought at the same time. The god here. Boss Luo replied more accurately. Taisetsu frowned and said subconsciously, What if it's not here? It can't leave here. Luochio shook his head. The outside will not accept them. Taisetsu said blankly, Why? Luochio looked at Taisetsu and said coldly, Will you accept another self that appears in front of you? No matter if it's memory, ability, or even feelings, everything can be another self that is like you. This? Taisetsu pondered for a while and finally shook his head. I don't know, but is it possible? Yu Yi said, We are the only ones, so it's impossible. Taisetsu seemed to think of something, but he could not grasp it. Luochio suddenly waved his hand. Taisetsu seemed to be pulled by something. He looked back and felt that the space behind him suddenly collapsed. If the guest is not so fast, you should go and warm up first. Luochio said abruptly, You only used Zhang Lu to kill the resentful spirit in the reservoir once. You still need to practice more. Taisetsu nodded. He would do whatever the boss asked him to do. Because the kindness was too great, he had long made up his mind to be the boss's sharpest sword. Where are we going? Luochio said, It should be a place called Evil Ghost Island. It's overseas, so it's okay to do as much as you want. Taisetsu nodded, turned around, and stepped directly into the collapsed space. Jean Lu, who was on him, sent out a spirited thought at this time. It seemed to have become excited. It must be because it had been silent for too long. The place where the space collapsed gradually calmed down. Luochio looked down at this time, but he was looking at a magnificent mansion in the unripe rice village below. It was a place that was still lit in the dark night. Luochio said softly, "Mr. Arex, you still like nightmares more." Yu Yi said, "Because dreams are difficult to come true, nightmares are more realistic." Boss Luo suddenly said, "Have you ever had a dream?" Yu Yi shook her head. She wouldn't dream and couldn't dream. Boss Luo turned his palm. "This is for you." It was a beautiful gift box. The servant girl was taken aback. She raised her cute face and looked at her master. Luochio chuckled softly. "I will give a gift to all the guests, let alone you." Yu Yi blinked her beautiful eyes and took it from Luochio's hands. "Master, can I choose when I want to open it? Then keep it first." Luochio nodded. He pointed to a place in front and smiled. "Accompany me for a walk over there." The servant girl naturally nodded obediently. And Mo Xiao returned directly to Zizaru's home. He didn't want to use his superpower to hurt ordinary people. At that time, he was just anxious, so he used the mental impact on Bamboo. At this moment, he was still a little worried about whether it would cause more undesirable consequences, so he needed to come back and take a look before he could rest assured. In addition, he was also very curious about Bamboo's request. It seemed that there were many discrepancies with the script he had. Even the gods appeared in this small, unripe rice village. Could it be the boss's masterpiece? To be able to pull people into such a magical world, in Mo Xiaofei's opinion, no one except the boss could do this. While thinking about it, Mo Xiaofei also used mental stimulation to wake Bamboo up. At this time, Bamboo slowly woke up. When she opened her eyes, she found that she was lying in the quilt, and Sir Kojiro was sitting cross-legged next to her. The first thing she thought about was whether she had already been pampered, so she blushed and lifted the blanket to look at her body. Her clothes were intact. Mo Xiaofei saw Bamboo's action and knew what she was thinking. At this time, he coughed twice awkwardly, then looked at Bamboo and said seriously, "Bamboo, why did you do such a thing? Is there anything you can't tell me? Why don't you tell me, cough, that you will die? I need a man's essence, otherwise." Bamboo lowered her head and said sadly, "I can't live." Chapter 691. Izanagi washed his right eye and gave birth to Tsukuyumi. He was the god in charge of the night. In Tsukuyumi's shrine, even if the three noble sons were fighting, he was still very polite to Amaterasu Omikami. This was not a matter of strength, but a matter of who was born first. Father God and Mother God. Is that true? After a secret conversation, Tsukuyumi's expression changed again and again. He was the god in charge of the night, Tsukuyumi. The moon was bright and flawless, but there was also a side of the moon that couldn't see the sun. Tsukuyumi, who was as handsome as a young girl, had a gloomy face at this time. The three noble sons were fighting for Yin Wuyue's world authority. But if the omnipotence was stolen by the evil demon, this situation of the three noble sons fighting would become meaningless. Did Sister inform Susanoo? Tsukuyumi thought for a moment before asking with a solemn expression. At this moment, heavy footsteps came from the shrine. A huge samurai wearing a crimson samurai armor broke in directly. None of the servants and shamans outside the shrine dared to step forward to stop him. "Amaterasu, why did you ask me to come here?" The visitor was the last of the three noble sons, the ruler of the ocean, Susanoo, who was born when Izanagi tested his nose. There was another secret conversation. When Susanoo heard this, his reaction was not much better than Tsukuyumi. Although Susanoo was puzzled about this matter, he was only puzzled about the sudden appearance of this evil demon. As for the seriousness of the evil demon stealing the world, Amaterasu naturally could not lie about this. This was something that could be asked about Father God and Mother God as long as they went to Yahiro no Dawn. In addition, Amaterasu also brought Izanagi's token. Even if Tsukuyumi and Susanoo had more doubts in their hearts, they had to obey at this time. Father God means to let us 3 noble sons take action and defeat this evil demon who stole the world together. Tsukuyumi pondered for a moment. Amaterasu said, Father God and Mother God need to guard Hiranodon. Once you leave, I am afraid that the evil demon will take advantage of the situation. The origin was Hiranodon on the heavenly jade pillar, which was the center of Yin Wuyue's world. It was because of the guarding of these 2 gods that Yin Wuyue's world was stable. I will summon the troops immediately. But Amaterasu, Tsukuyumi, both of you need to hold nothing back. Susanoo was very straightforward. We know each other very well. If there is anything to hide, we will know at a glance. Tsukuyumi said indifferently, Okay. Amaterasu nodded slowly. Before I came, Takamajahara had already begun to gather. I have also instructed the 2 Zanza goddesses to head to Unripe Rice Village to investigate. Calculating the time, there should be news. Susanoo directly knelt down and said solemnly, No matter what kind of evil demon it is, I will slay it with my sword. This was the peerless demon who had killed the Hakata serpent. The murderous aura surrounding his body was much denser than that of the other 3 noble sons. A stream of light came to Tsukuyumi's shrine at this time, but it stopped outside the shrine. It was one of the 3 goddesses Ojinjimaheim. However, she was not a big shot like Susamezuin. Naturally, she did not dare to barge in casually. Ajin Island's Ji Ming, come in. Amaterasu Amakami raised his hand. As soon as Ajin Island's Ji Ming entered, she knelt in front of the 3 noble sons. Tsukuyumi sat in the middle of the 3 noble sons, while the other 2 sat on the left and right. After all, this was the country of darkness, the territory of the moon god. The 3 noble sons' gazes fell on Ajin Island's Ji Ming, making her very nervous. She began to figure out the seriousness of the situation again. Ajin Island's Ji Ming, why are you the only one here? Amaterasu frowned. Ajin Island's Ji Ming hurriedly said, Lord God, I was ordered to go to the back of Mount Famen with Tokadu Amakami. She explained everything in detail. In the end, Tokadu Amakami stayed temporarily to observe the human samurai. I came back to report. Can the human samurai really cut off the divine might? As soon as Susanoo spoke at this time, the sound of wind and thunder echoed in the shrine hall. I saw it with my own eyes. Sasaki Kojiro. Tsukuyumi frowned. I have some impression of this human samurai. He once asked for several demons in the country of darkness. He is a swordsman who wants to pursue the pinnacle of swordsmanship. In the mortal world, his swordsmanship is unparalleled. But it is only mortal swordsmanship. Even if he goes further, he can't cut off the divine might. But he strangely appeared in Unripe Rice Village. Could it be? Tsukuyumi looked around and saw a trace of solemnity from Amaterasu Amakami and Susanoo at the same time. Ajin Island's Ji Ming was alarmed that a mortal had mastered the ability to shake the foundation of the god's rule. However, the 3 noble sons were alarmed that this was the work of the evil demon who intended to steal the world. I will go back to the sea and gather the evil spirits first. Susanoo stood up without saying a word. Gather at Mount Famen in 3 days. Then, I will return to Takamagara first. Amaterasu Amakami also stood up. Ajin Island's Ji Ming, come back with me first. Farewell, sister. Tsukuyumi stood up to welcome her. Although it was called Devil's Island, in Taisetsu's view, it was more like a place piled up by countless reefs. The entire island wasn't big, but it was barren and desolate. In addition, the sky was covered with dark clouds, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. He didn't know if this place was like this every day or if he just happened to encounter such terrible weather. Stop! Who are you? On the cliff in front, a 3-meter-tall, huge figure suddenly appeared. He held a huge club full of sharp thorns in his hand. He had a single horn on his head, and his entire body was crimson. It was a one-eyed humanoid monster. Is this the evil spirit? Taisetsu looked at it and then grabbed the key. With a wave of his hand, Azure appeared. There was a faint sound of a sword. How long has it been since you fought? Seeing Jean Lu's excited look, Taisetsu couldn't help but shake his head. The crimson evil spirit jumped down at this time and said angrily, "Human, how dare you ignore me? I want you dead." Taisetsu frowned and said, "Are you the only one here? I alone am enough to kill and eat you." The evil spirit grinned. Taisetsu's lips moved, but he didn't say anything in the end. Seeing this, the evil spirit was instantly enraged. "Human, how dare you look down on me? Roar. First of all, I don't think I taste good." Taisetsu shook his head. "Also, I didn't say it because I didn't want to hurt you, because my partner just said something to me." "What did he say?" Taisetsu said indifferently. "If I use this sword, you will die." Jean Lu swung out, and the sword energy was everywhere. The crimson evil spirit that was still roaring was instantly smashed into pieces. Even the huge club in his hand was cut into dozens of pieces. "Did I go overboard?" Taisetsu walked closer and looked at the evil spirit's corpse. There was nothing scary about it. Blood. Taisetsu had seen a lot of it before. He just waved Jean Lu in his hand and whispered, "So, how long has it been since you last fought?" Jean Lu buzzed and rushed out directly. Daz was still holding Jean Lu in one hand, but his body was directly brought up by Jean Lu and rushed directly into the depths of the evil ghost island. Bang! With a loud sound, the entire evil spirit island seemed to be shaken. A ray of light crashed into one of the mountain peaks on Malevolent Demon Island and sank into it. When Taisetsu coughed and used his palm to sweep away the dust and dirt on his body, he felt as if there were countless eyes on him. He couldn't help but look up. In front of him was an incomparably huge cave with layers upon layers. At this moment, as far as the eye could see, there were crimson, green, and leopard print shorts. There were probably hundreds of ugly, evil spirits, all of whom were looking at him in astonishment. "Human, roar, kill him, stew him. If I use this sword, you might die." Jean Lu, can you not say this every time? Sword light flashed. "Why is there no male?" Mo Xiaofei paused. "Without that, you will die." Zhuzi lowered her head, but she didn't dare to look at Mo Xiaofei. She said sadly, "The young women in the village are cursed after reaching the age of 14. If there is no male essence to sustain them, they can't live for more than a month. Many women in the village have died unnatural deaths." Mo Xiaofei was taken aback. Not to mention where the curse came from, Zhuzi's statement seemed to have some logical flaws. He frowned and said, "You said that many girls have died? That's not right. If one time can last for a month, it shouldn't be reasonable, right? At the very least, if they get married, shouldn't they be able to solve this problem?" In Mo Xiaofei's view, such a curse would at most make the people in the unripe rice village marry earlier. However, early marriage was very common in ancient times. "It would be great if it's just like this," Zhuzi said sadly. "However, the terrible part of this curse is that the same male essence can only sustain a woman for a month. When it comes to the next month, another different male essence is needed." Mo Xiaofei's eyes widened suddenly. She must have sex with a different man every month to prolong her life? What kind of curse is this? The wife must go with the husband. Is it a cuckold curse? The village routinely changes and plays with each other every month? Zhuzi, Mo Xiaofei looked at Zhuzi uneasily. How old are you this year?" "Just turned 14. Zhuzi looked at Mo Xiaofei pitifully. Her pale face suddenly showed some shyness. "Sir Little Cairo, Zhuzi is still a virgin." Her voice was so subtle that it was almost inaudible. Mo Xiaofei swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The air suddenly became quiet. He finally took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry. Although I won't leave you in the lurch, I really can't help you with this kind of thing. Besides, why is it an outsider like me?" Zhuzi gritted her teeth and said, "Sir Little Cairo, we can't go out of the unripe rice village. Once we leave, we will die. So even if the women outside the village want to go out to find a man to copulate with, they can't do it. Therefore, the four men are particularly important to us. Sir Little Cairo, please save Juzi and the other women in the village. There are already several women who are about to reach the deadline and can't find a new male essence. So as long as her little Cairo is willing, you can at least let us live for another month." Mo Xiaofei stood up and paced back and forth in the room. He shook his head and said, "This is too abnormal. Don't you have a shrine and a Miko? Why doesn't the Miko help you?" "Miko is also a victim of the curse," Bamboo said sadly. "The previous generation's Miko-sama died because she couldn't find a suitable man within the time limit. And now, the new Miko-sama still has half a year to go before she turns 14, but after all, she's still young." Probably out of respect for the Miko, even though he knew that the young which couldn't do it, he could only say it was because of her young age. That's not right. According to the plot, shouldn't the unripe rice village's Miko be powerful and purify the pen spirit with the help of the heroine? Although Mo Xiaofei wasn't clear about the specific plot, the plot should be heading in this direction. But now wait, Mo Xiaofei suddenly remembered that there was a goddess waiting for him outside. He couldn't help but have an idea. The Miko couldn't deal with this curse, but if the goddess took action, it should be no problem. Mo Xiaofei's faith would be shattered if he didn't help. He immediately said, "Juzi, I know what happened to you. I will find a way to help you solve this matter. But you have to tell me the source of this curse." "Sir Little Cairo?" Juzi raised her head in surprise at this time. Mo Xiaofei had to say, "If it's a demon making trouble, I at least have the ability to deal with it." Juzi said in surprise, "Sir Little Cairo, are you a samurai?" "Sort of." Mo Xiaofei had a nod. But at this moment, there were a lot of footsteps outside the house. In addition, there was a fire outside, and there was a hubbub of voices. The door of the room was hurriedly opened at this time. It was Juzi's father, Zizuru. At this time, Zizuru looked back and forth between Juzi and Mo Xiaofei. Seeing that both of them were well-dressed, he couldn't help but look a little disappointed. He had to say, "Sir Little Cairo, Master Nagato has been waiting outside. Please meet him." Mo Xiaofei frowned and asked abruptly, "Are you the one who tipped him off? Do you want to catch me and keep me in this place?" His voice was a bit heavy, and there was a trace of anger in it. The body he was wearing had an extraordinary bearing. He Zhilong knew that he was in the wrong, so he knelt down in fear and said, "Master Kojiro, I'm sorry. I had no other choice. If Master Nagato knows that I have a secret stash, women would die because of the curse, but men didn't seem to have this restriction. They just couldn't go out of the village." This Zizuru was naturally afraid of offending the samurai family that controlled this place. "Excuse me, is your Highness Little Cairo here? Can you come out to meet me?" A heavy voice came slowly at this time. Mo Xiaofei's eyes focused. Transmission. Chapter 692. It was not difficult to imagine that the entire village was shrouded in such a curse. The villagers valued this fresh blood outsider to the point that almost all the men in the village were mobilized. Outside the crowd, there were many village women looking at the scene. There was a faint uneasiness on their faces, as well as a hint of expectation. Mo Xiaofei glanced at Kishiro and Bamboo. He didn't say anything, walked out directly, and met the samurai family's master of Unripe Rice Village. After Master Nagato looked up and down at Mo Xiaofei, he suddenly said, "Are you really a samurai? Do you have an identity certificate? Just think of me as a wandering samurai." Mo Xiaofei waved his hand and said. Mo Xiaofei didn't know what Master Nagato was thinking, but this kind of gaze was not unfamiliar to Mo Xiaofei. It was like a drug addict seeing hallucinogenic white powder. Master Nagato nodded. "Then, please come with me." The men in slightly better clothes around him should be from the samurai family, but most of them were carrying a bamboo sword. Including Master Nagato, there were only 3 people who actually wore a samurai sword. One of them was somewhat similar to Master Nagato. He looked like he was in his 30s. He must be Saburo Nagato, who escaped from the battle. The other one was very young. He was probably not much older than the real Mo Xiaofei. He was only 17 or 18 years old. He should be Master Nagato's son. "Okay, but I need to pack up." Mo Xiaofei nodded, then turned and walked into the house. Master Nagato waved his hand at this time. The servants behind him and many men in the village immediately surrounded this place inside and out. These naturally couldn't be hidden from Mo Xiaofei's perception. He shook his head. He had an indescribable feeling about this village in his heart. Your Highness Kojiro, the people outside can't stop you at all. Suddenly, there was the voice of Doji Haiming. Mo Xiaofei frowned, slowly turned around in the room, shook his head, and said, "They also have their difficulties. If there is a conflict, it will only hurt the innocent." Doji Haiming also frowned slightly, but she didn't continue on this issue. She just said indifferently, "I saw that your Highness Kojiro hasn't returned for a long time, so I came to check. Goddess, what do you think of the curse of this village?" Mo Xiaofei asked abruptly. Jiao Jiming glanced at Mo Xiaofei. Since this human warrior asked this question, he obviously knew that she was coming and even knew that she had heard the conversation between him and Bamboo. Jiao Jiming didn't blush. She frowned and said, "This village is indeed filled with an ominous feeling. As for the curse that the village girl spoke of, it's hard to say." Hard to say? Mo Xiaofei was surprised. Jiao Jiming nodded and said, "Some curses are very strange. They won't show up immediately. Even as a god, some powerful curses need to be carefully examined before they can be discovered." This was completely different from the concept of an omniscient and omnipotent god that he knew. Mo Xiaofei nodded. However, he felt less reverence for the so-called three goddesses. Perhaps the so-called god was just a slightly more powerful creature. There was still a long way to go before they could be omniscient and omnipotent. Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath and said, "Goddess, can you do me a favor? Tell me first." Jiao Jiming said indifferently. Mo Xiaofei said, "The Nagato family may know more about this curse, so I plan to go to Master Nagato's house. As for Bamboo, Goddess, can you help me to check the origin of this curse?" Jiao Jiming was surprised. "Your Highness Kojiro, are you going to solve this problem for the villagers?" Mo Xiaofei said indifferently, "I can't ignore it. Since I can't, I'll help." Jiao Jiming shook her head. "You must know that everything has a reason. Even a drowning person may be a heinous person. Do you have to help him?" Mo Xiaofei said seriously, "When you see someone drowning, do you have to consider whether he is a bad person before you help him?" Mo Xiaofei shook his head. "You can't know in advance. And once he drowns, it's the most dangerous situation. You don't have time to find out what kind of person he is. But one thing is certain. Once you hesitate, the drowning person will die. In the end, you may even know that he is a good person, and you kill a good person with your own hands. On the other hand, if you know that the person is a bad person, you will be relieved secretly. But at this time, you have lost your mind, because you have become the weak water that can drown people." Jiao Jiming remained silent for a while before she finally nodded. "Then you can go to Little Tsilong Hall first. I will carefully examine this village girl. I should have a result before dawn. I will come to you when the time comes." "Thank you." Mo Xiaofei smiled, as if he was relieved. Then he walked past Jiao Jiming calmly. Jiao Jiming whispered to herself, "What a pure person." But when Susanoo returned to his divine palace and prepared to gather the many soldiers under his command, there was a source of soldiers that did not receive a response. His oracle was not accepted by anyone, which made Susanoo feel that something was wrong. As the three noble sons, they were born from the authority of Izanagi and Izanami, the creators of the world of Yin Wuyue. Although they couldn't see through all things like the Father God and the Mother God, they were not bad when it came to premonitions. "You wait for me here." Inside the divine palace, Susanoo, who was wearing a crimson warrior armor, stood up and gave instructions to the witches below. Then he disappeared from the divine palace. Susanoo was in charge of the sea between many islands. The turbulent sea water couldn't stop him at all. Soon after, Susanoo landed on a barren, black, and rugged island. As soon as he landed, he felt something different. The sky above the island was covered with dark clouds all year round. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. But at this moment, it seemed to have weakened a lot. In addition, he found the body of one of his subordinates here. It seemed that he was killed by something. The body was fragmented, but the wound was very smooth. Susanoo narrowed his eyes behind the devil-like mask. This is the remnant sword chi? It's so sharp. No, this is not sword chi. This is sword intent. Susanoo was surprised. While thinking, his body flashed again and again as if he was taking a stroll, but each step was very far away. Evil spirit. Susanoo finally came to the entrance of a huge cave. A thunderous voice rang, but at the same time, he smelled the strong smell of blood. There was a fierce battle here. There shouldn't be such a strong smell of blood. He knew that these evil spirit subordinates were ferocious in nature. Even if they were in the same clan, they would fight for a long time. But they didn't show a belligerent behavior. They wouldn't see each other as real underground killers. Could it be a country that stopped the army? Susanoo shook his head. This possibility was very small. If it was another evil spirit tribe, it might be possible. But the evil spirits on this island were raised by the Lord of the Ocean, Susanoo. It was an open secret. The human king didn't want to court death to this extent. Finally, he came to the end of the tunnel. A green, evil spirit whose body was cut in half fell on the road at the end of the tunnel. It was a clean cut, and there was a look of horror on his face. The anger in Susan Mazuin's heart increased a bit, and he immediately stepped over the corpse. In front of him, in a huge cave, a large number of evil spirit corpses fell everywhere. Except for the evil spirit corpses, Susanoo couldn't see anyone else at all. Hey, there's one missing. A sudden voice sounded. Susanoo instantly raised his head and looked at the upper left position. In front of a small stone room, made by the evil spirits to rest, a young man in strange clothes and a scarf was dragging a ghost corpse out. In his other hand, he directly carried a long sword on his shoulder. When the young man with the sword saw Susanoo, he simply threw away the evil ghost corpse in his hand and jumped down. However, he was sizing him up. You are somewhat different from these evil ghosts. Are you a leader or something? Did you kill them? Susanoo's voice gradually turned cold. Young man, Taisetsu nodded indifferently. He was killing these ugly monsters. He even found many human skeletons and cooking tools in one of the stone rooms. There were also human bones on the cooking utensils. When he was brought in by Azure, he even saw some evil spirits roasting a human body. Killing these evil spirits was not stressful at all. Even it felt good. Then, Susanoo slowly pulled out the sword on his waist and said indifferently, "Use your life to pay for it." He didn't say anything more. He was originally a fierce god. The blood on his hands was probably more than the total number of gods in the Takamajahara. You want to fight because of a disagreement? I like it. Daz waved his sword to block Susanoo's slash, but his body was suddenly knocked to the ground by a huge force and dragged a few meters away. Taisetsu shook his numb arm in surprise. Using Jean Lu required a physical body. If he used Onyx Soul's atomization ability, he wouldn't be able to hold Jean Lu's body. Susanoo saw that this guy could barely block his attack, so he naturally looked down on him. Your strength is not bad. No wonder you can take all the evil spirits here. But if you want to deal with me, you are still 100 years too early. The gap between a human and a god can't be made up at all. Daz turned Jean Lu's right hand to his left hand. Then he swung it and muttered, I say the boss asked me to do a warm-up, but the evil ghosts here are all brittle. It seems that the one who is really used to warm up should be you. Boss, don't care about these details. Daz untied the scarf he was wearing, then stuffed it into his clothes. He smiled at Susan Minazun and said, Jean Lu said that it can beat you 10. This sword is actually a sword of strength? Taisetsu couldn't help but ridicule. It seemed that if it didn't speak these words for it, it would directly pull his body uncontrollably, just like when he was first pulled into this cave. Arrogant, Susanoo suddenly exploded. I'll let you see the true power of a god. You don't know anything about power. Taisetsu pointed his long sword. This was also what Jean Lu said. Damn it, when I picked you up and used you to kill the evil spirit in the reservoir, I didn't know you liked to show off so much. Soratatsuka, Susanoo roared, and the huge power made the whole cave begin to shake violently. Jean Lou's body suddenly emitted a strong light at this moment, and golden lines appeared on the quaint sword. Taisetsu suddenly felt a huge force flowing into his body. For a moment, he had an illusion that even the sky could be split open. Taisetsu, who was born to fight and slash people, didn't hesitate at all. He suddenly swung Jean Lou and cut it like a watermelon knife. There was no such thing as swordsmanship. It was just a straightforward slashing technique used in street fights. Susanoo snorted coldly. He waved the sword of Tatsuka in his hand to block this unorganized attack. But after blocking it, he suddenly felt bad. His own Tatsuka sword was actually cut by the opponent's sword a little, and even the blade was curled up. At the same time, a huge force pressed down on his body, causing his legs to sink directly into the hard rock. Susanoo was shocked. This guy was not a brilliant swordsman at all. At this time, he was holding the sword like holding a kitchen knife. He only knew how to chop the ground. But this kind of attack was like chopping firewood. The power of each strike was terrifying, and the speed was so fast that he couldn't catch it. What was worse was that he couldn't remember when such a powerful swordsman appeared in the human world. After blocking for 4 or 5 times, the sword of Tatsuka had a gap of the same number. The sword of Tatsuka had accompanied Susanoo for many years and had made countless contributions. At this time, he was so heartbroken that he almost wanted to cry. "Who the hell are you?" Susanoo exclaimed, but under the last block, the Tatsuka sword was directly cut in half by the opponent. The broken blade flew into the air, spinning rapidly, and finally inserted into the rock above. At this time, the other party said heavily, "My name is Taisetsu. From now on, after 12 o'clock at night, I will be in charge. Forget what I said." Chapter 693. Wisps of purple smoke came out from the cut of the Tatsuka sword. In just a moment, the purple smoke had filled the entire bottom of the cave. Daz was slightly surprised. Looking at the purple smoke that became thick around him, he thought this was some trick of the warrior in red armor in front of him. He felt that there was something with a certain degree of danger, and it was stirring at this time. He only felt a sudden chill on his back, a bad feeling, and he instantly soared up. He saw a very long shadow passing by. It was a huge head with a super long neck, a snake head. Taisetsu's feet landed on a platform above the cave. In the thick purple smoke below, he saw a huge shadow. At the same time, huge heads began to rush out of the smoke and madly bite Taisetsu. Bang, 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 dash. When these loud noises sounded, Susanoo had already left the cave and stood somewhere outside, looking from afar. Tatsuka's sword is broken. Hakata is also free. You can enjoy it. Susanoo snorted coldly and left the place without looking back. The thing that left the Tatsuka sword was a terrifying local beast, Hakata no Orochi. At that time, Susanoo used a trick to make Hakata no Orochi drunk and took the opportunity to cut off its head. But this beast, without a body, seemed to be more terrifying when it was only active with its soul. Fortunately, the Tatsuka sword was quite mysterious in sealing the soul. Even if the body of the Hakata no Orochi died, its soul was in a drunken state because of drinking the special wine, so it was finally sealed in the Tatsuka sword. Yamato no Orochi's hatred for Susanoo has been accumulating for a long time. Now that he has broken the seal, he will definitely not let him go. Now, he can only take this terrifying human as prey before it finds out. After a fight, he will leave first. Amaterasu's subordinate, Ozzy Uzheim, is right. Susanoo's eyes were extremely solemn under the ghost mask. That guy from the mortal world really has such terrifying power. We can't just sit here and wait for death. We can't let Mother Goddess Yin Wuyue shatter. The Hakata serpent was more distressed. It shouldn't have been greedy. In the end, it was sealed in the sword of Tatsuka by that little brat's trick. For it didn't matter whether it had a body or not, because its ability was to transform its body between reality and illusion. It just needed a certain amount of time. However, since he had already broken out of the seal, the little brat who plotted against him back then should suffer his wrath. Huh, that little brat escaped? No matter, I can lock onto his aura. As for this little guy in front of me, isn't he a little special? It didn't smell like a human, but it seemed to contain a decent amount of power. He decided to swallow it and recover. Roar! The Hakata serpent's 8 huge heads made a sound at the same time, which kept refracting in the cave and then overlapping. It was no less than a thunderclap in a rainstorm. Taisetsu covered his ears with some discomfort. The sound of the 8 snake-headed monster didn't seem to be simple sound waves. At this moment, Jean-Lu once again burst out a strong light, and a strong force gushed out again. Taisetsu's spirit was shaken, and his power suddenly increased. He directly jumped down and chopped at one of the Hakata serpent's heads. His body turned into a stream of light, and his speed was almost unstoppable. The Hakata serpent, which had just broken the seal and hadn't fully awakened, seemed to have sobered up a lot after the roar. But suddenly, it only felt an unbearable pain. One of its heads had been directly chopped off. The moment the severed head fell to the ground, it turned into a pool of strange liquid and melted. Then it seemed to evaporate, disappearing in an instant. Taisetsu glanced at it and thought to himself, "It just looks scary." At this moment, the Hakata serpent was shocked. The remaining 7 heads and 14 eyes all looked at Taisetsu, or rather, at the Jean-Lu sword in his hand. "Jean-Lu, why did you come to this broken place? You still don't want to let go of our Shangliu clan. Damn Kelowna Taoist." Huh? Taisetsu looked up. He saw that the remaining 7 heads of the Hakata serpent emitted more purple smoke, and its entire body completely turned into mist in a short period of time. It quickly sank into the soil. Taisetsu frowned and subconsciously swung Jean-Lu forward. A golden sword light directly split open the mountain where the cave was, and then a huge crack that was hundreds of meters long appeared with him as the starting point. Taisetsu vaguely felt that this sword strike should have hit the purple smoke, but it didn't seem to have killed it. Jean-Lu's surging power had stopped at this time, and Daz had a feeling of physical exhaustion. It seemed that this borrowed power would greatly consume something similar to his physical strength. "Now, I'm done warming up, right?" Taisetsu remade Jean-Lu into a key and then wrapped the scarf around it. Then he walked to the edge of the Devil Island. To his surprise, the dark clouds on the road began to disperse, and a beam of sunlight began to shine down. Taisetsu looked at the endless sea and suddenly thought of a serious problem. He was thrown here by the boss, and then, how can I go back? Taisetsu's stupefied face was fresh out of the oven. It was as if he was chasing the stars and the moon. The light that flew in the sky like a shooting star was Amaterasu Amakami, and one of the 3 goddesses, Oziu Jiming, who were heading to Takamagara. "God Lord, we will arrive at Takamagara in a while." Oziu Jiming's voice sounded quite solemn at this time. She suddenly said, "What is in the unripe rice village that requires the 3 noble sons to gather?" "Oziu Jiming, what do you want to say?" Amaterasu Amakami suddenly stopped. Oziu Jiming said sternly at this time, "I have more important things to report about the unripe rice village." Amaterasu Amakami suddenly frowned. "Why didn't you say it when we were in the country of Darkness's palace?" "God Lord, please calm down." Oziu Jiming was shocked. "I don't know if I should say it. After all, Master Tsukuyami and Susanoo-sama were also there." Amaterasu Amakami landed on a mountain peak below at this time, and Oziu Jiming followed directly. Amaterasu looked at the mountains at this time and said slowly, "You report it first." But it seemed that Amaterasu should no longer blame him. Oziu Jiming took a step forward at this time, lowered her voice, and said solemnly, "God Lord, have you ever heard of such a place where no matter what you want, as long as you can pay the price, you can buy it? In fact, it was something that even the gods could move for. It could also be realized. I'm afraid that even Izanagi and Izanagi can't whisper the temptation. Even the gods are tempted." Amaterasu Amakami was taken aback, then frowned. "Nonsense! Where did you hear this fallacy?" Is it the words of the evil spirit that steals the world hidden in the unripe rice village? Oziu Jimming raised her head at this time and said puzzledly, God Lord, you just said the evil spirit that steals the world? Amaterasu Amakami sighed at this time and said, Forget it. It's time for you to know. It's good to be mentally prepared in advance. Not long ago, I was uneasy, so I went to Hirodu in person and met the father and mother gods. Then I learned. Amaterasu Amakami briefly said what she knew from Yaodu, and Ajin Island's Heim had already walked in front of Amaterasu Amakami. Her face was full of shock and fear, but she listened very carefully for fear that she would miss a thing. Therefore, I temporarily reconciled with Tsukuyami and Susanoo. Amaterasu Amakami sighed. Now, do you know everything? The world has reached such a time of crisis. Oziu Jimming's face was pale. It was a look of extreme horror. Amaterasu shook his head at this time, then asked, The thing you just said, where did you hear it from? Is it really a rumor spread by the evil spirit hidden in the unripe rice village? Ajin Island's Heim hurriedly stepped forward. God Lord, I heard this from Erex. Erex? Who? Amaterasu thought for a while. She was trying hard to search for everything about this name in her memory. But at this moment, a sharp pain began to spread from her body. A beautiful odachi had directly pierced through her body. Oziu Jimming, you actually... Amaterasu Amakami looked at the other party in disbelief. The goddess born from her divine power betrayed her. I'm called Mickey. Oziu Jimming's body gradually changed, and she finally became a girl in a kimono. Padash. That was the sound of both hands hitting at the same time. Zhuefeng looked at the mosquito that died on his palm. He was extremely dissatisfied. The mosquitoes in this damn place were not afraid of the beastkin aura at all. They even dared to approach. The unripe rice village should be nearby, right? Zhuefeng looked at the surrounding environment, but he seemed to hear something coming from the shadow of the trees on the side of the road. They were carrying a lantern. The lantern was taken from a house on the road. Of course, they put down some copper coins as if they bought it. Who is it? Zhuefeng opened his palm, and his nails began to become sharp. Then he slowly approached, only to see a figure walking out of the tree trunk at this time. Then, before she could say a word, she fell directly to the ground. This scene, where did I see it? Zhuefeng was stunned and walked up to her. He turned the person over and saw that it was a woman. Her face was pale, and there was a terrible wound on her body. There was still blood at the corner of her mouth. Her mouth moved slightly as if she was saying something, but her voice was very soft. It sounded like she was sleep-talking. Chapter 694. In a not-so-bustling seaside town, a warrior who had just finished drinking was on his way home. He was holding a wine pot in his hand, and his body was staggering, humming a little tune with a hint of peachy smell. The warrior suddenly felt the urge to pee, so he opened his hazy eyes and quickly found a small alley. He planned to go in and relieve himself on the spot. In the depths of the alley, just as the warrior had finished his business and was feeling refreshed, a soft purple light suddenly appeared. There seemed to be something there. The warrior was curious, but he was not afraid because he was drunk. He walked closer step by step. He realized that the source of the purple light seemed to be this strange purple fog. At this time, the warrior's reaction was very slow. He opened his eyes and stared in front of him in a daze. Finally, there was a flash of panic in the warrior's eyes. He took a step back and fell to the ground. His sense of balance was really too bad. Monster, monster. He turned around and wanted to crawl and run out of this place in fear. He regretted that he should not have peed in this place. He continued to run crazily, but in the end, he could not run out of this place. The purple fog had been completely swallowed by him. Only an even more miserable cry could be heard, and everything returned to normal. Not long after, the warrior walked out of the alley again. He was no longer staggered, but was rather steady. This was because he had turned into the Hakata serpent. To be exact, he was just a temporary vessel for the Hakata serpent. Of course, it did not need to take over a warrior's body, but it had to do so now. It needed this warrior's body to hide its aura, because it did not know if the strange person with the Jean-Lou's sword would chase after it. Jean-Lou's sword, the sword of the emperor, was made by the righteousness of heaven and earth. It had great restraining power against all evil beings. The Jean-Lou's sword has appeared again? The warrior that Yamato no Orochi was attached to muttered to himself as he walked. Back then, there was a strange Taoist who used a sword to slay demons. He used this clear sable sword. Even though I'm young, I still can't forget the aura of the clear sable sword. So I can't be wrong. The Hakata serpent couldn't help but feel bewildered. Back then, the strange Taoist suddenly disappeared after slaying the demon with his sword. It and most of its clansmen were lucky enough to survive. Later on, when it gradually grew up, it broke off with the clan because of differences in ideology and had no choice but to be exiled in the end. As for this Yin Wuyua world, it was a strange space that it found by chance. It seemed to be a complete world, but it revealed a strange feeling everywhere. Everything seemed to be right, but was actually wrong. It was just that in this world, no one could fight against it except for the two in the 8 Sun Hall. Thus, he decided to settle down here for the time being. When he had nothing to do, he would sleep. When he was bored, he would wreak havoc. Although he was no longer in Kelowna, he was still carefree. However, it did not expect that because of its greed, it would be sealed for so long before it was finally released. It did not expect that as soon as it was released, it would encounter the clear sable sword that had caused it, its clansmen, and even the entire demon realm to tremble in fear. At the moment when it recognized the clear sable sword, the Hakata serpent almost thought that the strange Taoist appeared again. Could it be the descendant of that Taoist? The Hakata serpent frowned at this time. It seemed that the more it thought about it, the more likely it was, but it couldn't grasp the key point in it. There was too little information from the outside world. I don't know how many years have passed in Kelowna. Has the Xionglu clan? The Hakata serpent's eyes revealed a hint of hatred. I absolutely don't agree with this idea. From then on, I'm no longer a member of the Xionglu clan. I am myself. The Hakata serpent finally walked out of this small town quickly, but at the moment of leaving, it seemed to feel something. It subconsciously looked up at the end of the night sky. The Hakata serpent's expression changed slightly, and it muttered to itself, "Who is changing the rules of this pseudo-world?" The pupils of the human body that it possessed suddenly turned golden, and a strange smile appeared at the corner of its mouth. Could it be that this world belongs to me? Is it fate? Forget it. Back then, I couldn't defeat Izanagi and Izanami. Now why not give it a try? The Hakata serpent finally disappeared into the wilderness. In M.O. Xiaofei's opinion, the house of the samurai and Master Nagato looked a little like the ancient scenic buildings in Area 11 that he often saw on TV. The wooden floor, corridors, courtyards, and small ponds were winding, and he could even see servants kneeling on the ground to welcome him. It was already past midnight, but M.O. Xiaofei's spirit was strong, so he wasn't sleepy. On the contrary, Master Nagato's eyes were bloodshot. In addition to Master Nagato, there was also his younger brother, Saburo, and his young son, Shinji Nagato. Dong! The bamboo tube in the pond outside the house welcomed the water flow and finally made a crisp sound. At the same time, Master Nagato in the house also slowly said, "Your Highness Kojiro, I don't know what you have considered. Do you plan to stay in Unripe Rice Village for the time being? Once you can stay, the Nagato family will reward you handsomely after the matter is over." In Master Nagato's house, M.O. Xiaofei knew more things than he knew from bamboo. First of all, the curse of the village did not always exist, but it happened in the past 6 years. At first, the Nagato family did not wait for death, but tried everything. However, even the witch of the local shrine had died. The Nagato family seemed to have truly succumbed to this curse. Let's not talk about whether the Nagato family really fought against the curse. After all, there were many things that could not be justified. Now, the Nagato family's request was to take care of all the cursed women in this village. As long as M.O. Xiaofei thought about it, he felt a chill down his spine. Although the curse started at the age of 14, which was a wonderful age, There was no upper limit to the curse. There's so many old ladies. It's so evil. Master Nagato. Mo Xiaofei quickly recalled the news about the curse he heard, and then said sternly, "After listening for so long, you seem to have not told me what the source of this curse is. A curse will not appear for no reason. There must be a reason for it. This matter is related to the secret of my unripe rice village. I can't tell you." Master Nagato spoke slowly, but it was a refusal. "Your Highness Kojiro, just answer me. Are you willing or not?" This was not a tone of begging, but an order. Mo Xiaofei believed that everyone was equal. He was very resistant to this class concept. He shook his head and said, "I won't agree. You don't know what's good for you." Shinji Nagato, who was sitting next to him, snorted coldly at this time, then looked at Master Nagato. "Father, I have already said that this kind of outsider just doesn't know how to be flexible. There is no need to waste time talking to them. Just tie them up." He jumped up at once and pulled out his sword without saying a word. He looked arrogant. "You are also a samurai. Do you dare to accept my challenge? If you lose, you will stay." Mo Xiaofei opened his mouth and finally sighed. He complained, "If I win, I have to fight all of you. Because you want to say that you never thought I could win? Smart. But can you win against me?" Shinji Nagato snorted coldly. Chapter 695. Eliminating the weak and keeping the strong. Mo Xiaofei didn't know if the so-called samurai way was far from such a thought. But, in Mo Xiaofei's opinion, Shinji Nagato at least thought so. Mo Xiaofei had long made a conclusion on how to use power, and he didn't want to change his original intention. But it didn't mean that he didn't know how to be flexible. There was still no news from the class monitor and others. How could he continue to dawdle here with the Nagato family? "Then let's duel." Mo Xiaofei stood up, looked at the tip of the sword in Shinji Nagato's hand, and said sternly, "But I won't use a weapon. How dare you look down on me?" Shinji Nagato's face suddenly showed a hint of anger when he heard it. Mo Xiaofei didn't want to continue to be entangled, so he said, "Well, at the right time, I will draw my sword. But do you really plan to do it here? For a samurai, no matter where it is a battlefield." Shinji Nagato shouted at this time, holding the sword high above his head with both hands. He stood in a straight line with one foot in front and one back. His body leaned forward slightly, but he moved quickly. For Mo Xiaofei, it was too slow. With a sidestep, Mo Xiaofei put his foot down casually and directly knocked Shinji Nagato to the ground. Shinji Nagato quickly got up, only to feel that his cheeks were burning. Looking at his father and uncle who were still sitting in front of him, he felt even more uncomfortable. Damn it. He even slashed horizontally. It seemed that he was a little confused because of anger. Mo Xiaofei took a step back and dodged easily. This samurai's attack was not comparable to Long Shurua's training for him. Recently, he had been abused by the teacher from top to bottom. He had doubts about life. Mo Xiaofei looked at Shinji Nagato's sullen expression at this time as if he was looking at himself during training. Could it be that I have actually become more powerful? After all, I still have the temperament of a teenager. But I really don't want to be entangled too much. I plan to end this boring battle directly. Let's use Spirit Shock. Mo Xiaofei's gaze locked on Shinji Nagato, and his eyes suddenly changed. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a feeling of weightlessness suddenly came. Mo Xiaofei looked down in astonishment, only to find that the floor he was standing on had suddenly opened up, revealing a big dark hole below. Gotcha! The floor that had been opened closed again in an instant, trapping him under the mechanism. Seeing that his opponent suddenly disappeared, Shinji Nagato looked at his father angrily. "I can beat him." Master Nagato just said indifferently, "Our purpose is not to defeat him, but to capture him. As long as he can serve us, that's enough." Shinji Nagato's eyes widened at this time. "I said, I can defeat him." Master Nagato snorted coldly. "Back off." Shinji Nagato gritted his teeth, his wrist trembling slightly as he gripped the hilt of his sword. In the end, he lowered his head angrily. Yes. Seeing Shinji Nagato turn around and leave, Master Nagato's eyes slightly narrowed. On the side, Saburo Nagato said slowly, "Brother, Shensi is still young. It may not be good to be too strict. There was a rope beside Saburo Nagato. Just when Mo Xiaofei stood on the mechanism, it was Saburo Nagato who pulled the rope to activate the mechanism. I don't need you to intervene in how I teach him. Master Nagato glanced at Saburo Nagato casually and said in a deep voice, "You coward! Shut up!" Yes. Saburo Nagato adjusted his sitting posture, facing Master Nagato, and nodded vigorously. He was the master of the Nagato family and had the absolute right to speak. In the entire Nagato family, no one dared to disobey Master Nagato. As the successor, Shinji Nagato dared not. As a younger brother, he could not do it. Despite the dissatisfaction in his heart, he could only bow his head in the face of Master Nagato, who held the power of the Nagato family. Master Nagato snorted coldly again at this time. He looked at the position of the mechanism and muttered, "I don't know the origin of this Kojiro. Just watching the duel between him and Shinji, I know that he must be a master. He was separated from his companions, so he came here." Saburo Nagato quickly said at this time, "Big brother, no matter whether he is powerful or not, as long as he's trapped down there, he will naturally have no strength after being hungry for a few days. At that time, we can do whatever we want to him. Just like those who resisted in the past, in the end, didn't they obediently submit?" Master Nagato nodded slowly and said that Shizuko seemed to be planning to keep it for himself at first. If someone didn't see him and come to report to me, this person broke the rules. You go and deal with him. Saburo Nagato nodded, but his face was a little ugly. Master Nagato suddenly smiled coldly, looked at Saburo Nagato, and joked, "Why? Your hands are so dirty. Do you still have a clean place in your heart? You don't want to?" "No." Saburo Nagato sighed and stood up. "I'll deal with it now." Watching Saburo Nagato finally push the door and go out, Master Nagato said coldly at this time, "You should die on the battlefield. This is the highest glory for you and the Nagato family." Saburo Nagato's face changed slightly. In the end, he lowered his head and pulled the door closed. Master Nagato finally called again, "Coward." He then walked to the mechanism and stepped on it a few times with his feet, making a thumping sound. Knowing that this mechanism could not be opened from below, Master Nagato smiled coldly and left with his hands behind his back. Saburo Nagato picked up something at the entrance and prepared to go out. But at this time, his clothes seemed to be pulled by something. He looked back and saw a little girl of 4 or 5 years old. Her face was like a porcelain doll, delicate and flawless. The little girl raised her head and rubbed her eyes. She seemed too sleepy. "Father, where are you going?" Saburo Nagato irritably slapped away the little girl's palm that grabbed his clothes. At this time, he glanced behind the little girl. An old maid quickly stepped forward. The maid looked at Saburo Nagato with a faint fear. "Master Saburo, the previous movement was a little loud. It woke Miss Tsuruko up. I can't coax her to sleep. Take her back." Saburo Nagato shouted in a deep voice. "How did you take care of her? Is it because she is too comfortable?" No. The maid apologized again and again. She directly picked up the young Miss Tsuruko, hurriedly turned, and walked to the end of the corridor. Saburo Nagato frowned. At this time, it was drizzling outside the house. He was more irritated, so he put on a bamboo hat and went out. Dong dong. Hearing the voice from above, Mo Xiaofei rubbed his chin, letting his body slowly descend. The moment of weightlessness did cause his body to fall. However, it didn't take long for him to stabilize his body in the air. Mo Xiaofei didn't break the mechanism immediately because he heard some strange noises coming from below. Mo Xiaofei finally felt a chill from his feet. It was water. Right below the cave, there should be a pit filled with water that had been dug out by someone. Mo Xiaofei estimated that the distance from the top to the bottom was about 6 or 7 meters. If a person suddenly fell, he or she might break his or her limbs. However, with this puddle, he or she would not suffer much damage. But it was too dark here. He could not find any light source at all. Mo Xiaofei had to give up his sight directly and turn to sense through sound waves. Long Shirua said that the psychic ability was ever-changing and had many applications. As for how to apply it, he would develop it himself. At this time, Mo Xiaofei was using an ability that he developed himself. He made sounds by knocking, and his sense of hearing captured these sounds. Through the transmission of sound, the reflection of different vibrations, and so on, everything was formed in his mind. In fact, it was similar to the ability of a bat. So, after a few extreme palms, three-dimensional communication of the surroundings was formed in Mo Xiaofei's mind. He found that this place was not sealed. At least next to the dug puddle, there was a place to land. At the same time, there was a flow of air. It was a door. At the end of the passage, about 3 meters long, Mo Xiaofei felt the existence of a door. He walked directly to the door, reached out, and knocked on it. He found that the door was actually made of stone. There were many traces of different depths on the stone door. It seemed to be scratched by a sharp weapon. Perhaps this was left by the people of Nagato family who fell down like him. Maybe they were also samurai. They intended to use samurai swords to split this stone door, but it was in vain in the end. Mo Xiaofei moved. With his strength, he could not shake the huge stone door with his weight. He shook his head and simply concentrated. He only felt that his spiritual power seemed to be drawn by something and consumed a lot. Mo Xiaofei did not care too much. He only heard a rumbling sound in front of him. The stone door was also opened little by little under the push of the psychic power. Finally, there was a gap that allowed people to pass through. Mo Xiaofei stopped and felt unusually tired at the same time. How heavy is this door? It's so tiring? Mo Xiaofei wiped the sweat on his forehead. Just moving the stone door felt more tiring than 10 hours of continuous training in the underground training ground of the pet hospital. But the place exposed after the stone door was moved surprised Mo Xiaofei. First of all, there was already light here. The light source was the oil lamp hanging on the wall. There was a long passage in front. On both sides of the passage, there were stone rooms. The stone rooms were completely open. Huge and thick wooden bars formed a fence inlay. It looked like a prison cell. Mo Xiaofei frowned and looked at some of the prison cells. There were some clothes placed in some of them. He even found a set of bones in one of the cells. In another place, he found a large number of torture instruments. Some of the torture instruments even turned vermilion. That was the dried blood stains. This was a punishment. It was a torture chamber that had been used many times. What the hell is going on? Even with Mo Xiaofei's courage, he couldn't help but feel a chill at the creepiness of this place at this time. This chill rose directly from the soles of his feet to the nape of his neck. Mo Xiaofei turned around abruptly because he felt that something was approaching him at this time. What the hell? Mo Xiaofei shouted loudly. Your Highness Kojiro. It was a woman's voice. Mo Xiaofei was stunned. He saw that the person who appeared here at this moment was the girl who had temporarily cooperated with him. Doju. Goddess, why are you? Mo Xiaofei recognized the person and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He could only blame the atmosphere of this place for being too weird. He couldn't help but feel nervous. Why are you here? Your Highness Kojiro has been out for a long time. I'm a little worried, so I came to take a look. Doju said indifferently. I happened to see Your Highness Kojiro being plotted against by the head of the Nagato family. He fell into this trap, so I came to rescue him. Mo Xiaofei thought for a while and then asked suspiciously, Then, what about Master Nagato and the others? Doju shook her head and said, I didn't intend to let them see. Takuma Jiehara has a rule that we can't show in front of mortals casually. Of course, Your Highness Kojiro is powerful, so naturally it doesn't count. Oh, Mo Xiaofei didn't think much and asked directly, By the way, goddess, I asked you to help me check the situation of bamboo. Do you have any results? What curse is it? Doju frowned. It's strange. I have carefully checked, but I couldn't find any evil aura from this village girl. You know, any cursed power is bound to give birth to evil aura. But this village girl didn't have it. No. Mo Xiaofei was stunned. But looking at the appearance of bamboo and the attitude of the villagers, it's obvious that this is the case. Haim Doju nodded. This is also the reason why I feel strange. Therefore, in addition to the village girl you asked, I quietly checked a lot of village girls, but I still didn't find anything. At most, these village girls' aura is messy. But it's because they often have sex with different men and are contaminated with some men's aura. That's why it's messy. Speaking of this, Haim Dojiu's face was a little gloomy. Probably because the goddess was pure, she was very resistant to such messy aura. But even the goddess couldn't find anything. Was this curse really so powerful? There seems to be someone here. Mo Xiaofei looked in one direction at this time. When I fell, I vaguely heard something, so I didn't leave this trap immediately. This place seems to be a place where lynchings are abused. I'm afraid it's a victim of the Nagato family's plot. I have to go and check it out. Haim Dojiu just nodded. Mo Xiaofei then walked quickly in the direction he sensed. Most of the structures here were crooked, like prison cells. He didn't know how they were built, and the sound was also clearer. The deeper he went, the faster the air flowed, blowing the oil lamps on the stone walls on both sides. The flame flickered, and the shadows of a person and a god were constantly changing. There's really someone here. At the end of the path, there was another prison cell with a small window. A figure was sitting on the ground at this time. It was a woman in a gray kimono, but the woman's back was facing, and her hair was disheveled. He couldn't see her face clearly. Mo Xiaofei saw her shoulders trembling slightly, and some strange sounds came from her body. He approached the fence. "Are you okay?" "Huh. Hee." A weird laugh. The woman suddenly turned around and rushed to the front of the fence. With the help of the oil lamps here, he couldn't see the woman's age at all, but her lips and teeth were dripping with blood. Her hands grabbed the wooden bars of the fence at the same time, and one of her hands even grabbed a rat. She just swallowed the rat alive. "Huh. Hee." She was still laughing, tilting her head and widening her eyes. Her eyeballs seemed to be completely protruding out, which was horrifying. Hee. And Mo Xiaofei instinctively took a step back and bumped into Zhu Jiming, who was behind him. "Sorry, I didn't mean it. What happened to you?" At this moment, Haim Dojiu's face was pale, and she was about to fall to the ground. She raised her head and looked at Mo Xiaofei, saying weakly, "Little Jiro, Your Highness, there's something strange here. My divine power is disappearing." "What?" Mo Xiaofei felt a strong dizziness after hearing that. He struggled for a few times and finally fell to the ground like Haim Dojiu. The last sight, it was still the crazy woman in the prison cell, staring at him with her eyes wide open and her mouth full of blood. Hee. Consciousness began to lose. Consciousness began to recover. Mo Xiaofei opened his eyes and shook his head hard. The surrounding light was a bit dazzling, which made him unable to adapt to it. He got up, but didn't know when he had left the huge underground prison and came to the forest outside. Why is this place so familiar? Mo Xiaofei gave a start, and then he saw a girl carrying a wicker basket, walking with her head lowered worriedly on the road ahead. Mo Xiaofei opened his mouth. The girl he saw was obviously Bamboo. She was the first person he met when he entered the unripe rice village. "Bamboo, are you okay? Why are you here?" Mo Xiaofei quickly rushed forward and asked. The girl, Bamboo, raised her head at this time and looked at him in horror. She quickly took a step back and said in fear, "Who are you?" "I'm Mo Kojiro, Sasaki Kojiro." Mo Xiaofei quickly said, "I had dinner at your house last night. Have you forgotten?" Last night. Bamboo frowned and shook her head blankly. "I saw you for the first time. Why were you at my house last night?" Chapter 696. The stone steps that went up the mountain had been built for an unknown period of time. The mottled moss on the stone steps looked like a special pattern, but the boss and the maid knew that these stone steps were not gemstones. After passing through the vermilion torii, they climbed up about 100 steps. This extremely long staircase was considered to be completed. The sun had not yet emerged from the mountains, but the sky was already slightly bright. After finally climbing halfway up the mountain where the shrine was located, Luochio looked back. The village below had become very small. The appearance of a shrine was not much different from what Luaccio imagined. A box was placed in front, probably used to hold the tribute money of the worshippers. As for the left side, there was a wooden fence with many wooden signs hanging on it. New Year's wishes. The villagers of Unripe Rice Village would come to worship every New Year, then write their wishes for the coming year and hang them here. Luaccio seemed to be very interested. He walked directly to the wooden fence and looked at it carefully. The sky gradually brightened. In the early morning, it was the quietest time. However, some birds living in a mountain forest rushed into the sky from the distant mountain forest in flocks at this time. So many crows. Yi looked at them flying away. She seemed a little unhappy. After all, the crow's cry was not as pleasant as the oriole's. In people's inherent beliefs, it seemed to represent ominous things. However, for the club's boss and maid, there was no such thing as ominous. So, it could only be described as not beautiful. Luaccio just smiled. After looking at the prayers on the signs hanging on the wooden fence, he walked directly to the front of the shrine. He suddenly said with interest, "People worship the gods to get blessings. If we also worship, I don't know if they can bless us." Bless what? Perhaps even whether they had the courage to show up was a problem. Yui shook her head slightly. Luaccio stopped this topic and looked at the bell hanging in front. After people put down the tribute money, they would shake the bell here sincerely. There was even a requirement for the number of times. Everything had a rigorous and pious process. Who are you? The one who asked this question was the witch who was in charge of guarding the shrine. She walked over from the other side of the wooden railings where the prayer signs were placed. There was also a stone-paved path on the other side, which seemed to lead to the back of the shrine. She wasn't very old. She was wearing a plain kimono and carrying a small wooden bucket in her hand. Her hair seemed to be very long, almost reaching her heels, but at this moment, it was wet. Boss Luo's eyesight was very good, and naturally, Miss Maid's eyesight wasn't bad either, so she could easily see the trace of water vapor on Miko's body. Perhaps it was because he had just finished washing. Luocho nodded at the witch with a smile. "Hello." A trace of doubt flashed across Miko-sama's face, but she nodded at the same time and slowly walked over with the wooden barrel. She was a little surprised because this couple's attire was very strange. But Miko-sama had also encountered something even stranger and more unbelievable. That was why he was curious, but he wasn't too surprised. "Are you from another village?" With the help of the increasingly bright light in the sky, Miko-sama could already see the couple's appearance clearly. She had grown up in this land since she was a child, so she had a deep impression of the people who lived here. Whether they were strangers or not, she could recognize them at a glance. Kind of just passing by. Luaccio nodded. Miko-sama was very young, even younger than she was 5 years ago, so her body was very petite, like a girl who couldn't grow up. But her hair was really long, black hair, straight because of washing, and water droplets were still dripping from the ends. She was even more confused, but still asked politely, "Do you want to worship?" "No." Luaccio shook his head. "I want to be blessed, but the gods may not be able to give me." Miko-sama was surprised and opened her mouth slightly. In front of Miko-sama and Miko-sama who guarded the shrine, saying such words seemed to be disrespectful to the gods. She should be angry, but in fact she wasn't. She looked at the sky and knew that it was very early, so she was puzzled by the couple who came up at this time. It took a long time to walk up from the foot of the mountain. Therefore, they might have come up before dawn, or even before that. "Since you don't want to worship, then please leave." Miko-sama didn't intend to blame the two for their disrespect to the gods, but her attitude was a little cold. However, she was really too young. This trace of coldness did not seem like an iceberg. Instead, it seemed to have a hint of anger. "Can I walk around?" Boss Luo thought for a while. "I won't touch anything here. I promise." "Suit yourself," Miko-sama said indifferently, then glanced at Luaccio and suddenly said, "But you'd better leave this place as soon as possible." "So it's because I didn't worship?" Luaccio asked apologetically. Miko-sama shook her head. "It's dangerous for a man to stay in this village, especially when you're an outsider." "Dangerous?" "That's all I have to say." Miko-sama picked up the bucket again and walked into the shrine through the front door. Luo Qiu heaved a sigh of relief, looking at the door that was finally closed. Speaking of danger, the prayer signs hanging on the wooden railings were probably more dangerous, right? I don't know how Eric's is preparing. Boss Luo said suddenly. Yu Yi said softly, Eric's only needs us to control one of the people he thinks is in order to save more real souls in this pseudo-world. Since the requirements aren't high, I naturally need to make more preparations. Boss Luo smiled, looking at the position of the stone steps leading up. The first one to come is him. A shadow was running fast on the steep stone steps. Red robe, silver hair. It was Juefeng, a half-monster in this world. But Juefeng was obviously not alone. He was carrying an unconscious woman on his back at this time. Juefeng always found injured and unconscious people when he went out. He also felt quite helpless. Last time it was Zixing, because he sensed the weak monster power of Zixing. As a monster, Juefeng naturally couldn't treat her as an ordinary person. As for this time, this unconscious and injured woman didn't seem to be an ordinary person. Is anyone here? Just as they reached the end of the stone steps, Wind-chasing Wolf hurriedly shouted. The reason why he came to this place was because of some memories left in his body. Is anyone here? Juefeng took a few steps closer at this time and shouted again at the door of the shrine. At this time, the ears on his head trembled slightly. This was because he heard the sound of footsteps. As expected, not long after, a young shaman in a white kimono opened the door. Her hair was still wet. Inuyasha. His ears were so sensitive that Juefeng easily heard the name that the witch said in a very soft voice. But the witch frowned at the same time and seemed a little unhappy. Inuyasha, why are you still here? I have already said, who is the person behind you? Juefeng didn't know what the relationship between Inuyasha and this witch was. He just came here based on the guidance of his body's memory. Of course, he also had some ideas of discovering some clues about this bizarre incident. I don't know. Juefeng shook his head and said, I picked her up on the road. She was seriously injured and unconscious. Can you help me take a look? The witch tilted her head and thought for a while, then nodded. Bring her in. Wind-chasing Wolf hurriedly carried the person on his back and bypassed the boxes used for worship and walked into the shrine. But just as he put her down, before he had time to take a closer look at the interior of the shrine, he heard the voice of the witch. Just put her down. You can go out. The witch's attitude was a bit too tough. Juefeng didn't know why he had a thought of retreat, a kind of mentality that he himself felt incredible fear. Strange. Until the witch closed the door, Juefeng sat alone on the wooden ladder in front of the door, still feeling very confused. Perhaps this Inuyasha was very afraid of this woman? Juefeng couldn't figure it out a little. He looked around in boredom and saw many signs hanging on the wooden fence next to him. Because he was too bored, he came forward, rubbed his chin, and tilted his head to look at them. What is written? Next year. Harvest. I hope to be born a son. These words mean son, right? After a while, the voice of the witch suddenly came from the shrine. Inuyasha? Juefeng quickly approached, but the door was still closed. He could only listen and ask, What's the matter? Where did you meet this woman? On the road. Juefeng thought for a moment. On the way to the village. By the way, is this woman incurable? She won't die for the time being, but she's seriously injured. And she seems to what? The head of the storm chaser, Uncle Juefeng, was burning with curiosity. But there was no sound at the door, but he heard the sound of footsteps. Juefeng curiously put his ear on the door, trying to listen more carefully. Unexpectedly, the door was open at once. Juefeng could only take 2 steps back awkwardly. I didn't eavesdrop. You still haven't changed. You don't know how to be polite. The voice of the witch was a little sullen. Juefeng was shocked. Of course, this sullen voice didn't scare him, but the thing in the woman's hand made him feel danger. It was a longbow that the woman took from somewhere. She even had a quiver on her back. A long arrow was already on the longbow, and the sharp arrowhead was pointing straight at him. Wait, what do you want to do? I said, if you dare to step into this place again, I will kill you. As soon as she finished speaking, the witch released her finger, and a sharp arrow shot through the air, flying past Juefeng's cheek. It was so fast that he couldn't react. Hey, I have no enmity with you. What do you mean? Zhuefeng frowned. I will hit humans, regardless of whether they are men or women. Miko snorted coldly and took out another arrow, knocking it and releasing it once more. This time, Zhuefeng reacted. Without thinking, he stretched out his hand and caught the arrow. But he didn't expect that the arrow shaft would suddenly burn. It hurts. Zhuefeng threw the arrow away at once and glanced at his palm. The flesh on his palm was even burned, and it looked bloody. What a stupid guy. You dare to catch my arrow with your hand. The witch said coldly at this time. Inuyasha, you are really the stupidest monster. Damn, woman, don't think I will be afraid of you. Watch me. Zhuefeng was obviously irritated, and he jumped out in an instant. But at this time, the witch shot another arrow. This damn woman's arrow seemed to be a lot faster. Zhuefeng twisted his body in midair and narrowly avoided the arrow. But the sharp arrowhead also cut his clothes. With a snap, something fell from his clothes. A book. After Zhuefeng woke up, he had put a book on his body. But Zhuefeng didn't care about this kind of thing. He only felt that this damn woman's arrow was too dangerous. So he quickly pulled away and looked at her vigilantly. The witch frowned. She walked out of the shrine and picked up the book on the ground. After glancing at it, she looked at Zhuefeng and asked coldly, What do you mean? For you. Zhuefeng just finished speaking and was stunned for an instant. These words were blurted out, not what he wanted to say. You still remember? The witch glanced at it again, but her expression was a little complicated. A yes. Wind-chasing wolf nodded. It seemed that the other party was going to stop because of the book. Zhuefeng was naturally not stupid. He simply nodded generously. Well, I've been carrying it with me. It should be, no, it is to bring it to you. The witch didn't say anything. She took the book and put down the longbow in her hand. She turned and walked into the shrine. Wait a minute, what do you mean? She looked back and said indifferently, You can go. Don't come back in the future. If you come again, I will kill you. Wait a minute. I have something to ask you. Zhuefeng quickly asked, Have you seen someone called Zixing? She's about the same height as you. By the way, she is very beautiful. Get lost. A sharp arrow was nailed to Zhuefeng's foot in an instant. The arrow even continued to exude a kind of terrifying aura that made Zhuefeng tremble in fear. Zhuefeng swallowed his saliva subconsciously, but when he saw that the door of the shrine was closed, he quietly moved his foot away. This damn woman is so scary. Zhuefeng scratched his head and simply retreated, and then quickly left this place. Since he woke up, there was a strange thought in his mind, but when he gave the book, this strange thought disappeared. Chapter 697. There were a total of 15 well-equipped light footmen, 2 samurai with the family name, 5 attendants, and 1 maidservant. Miss Tsukihime of the Kondo family was traveling. In the eyes of the 2 samurai, such reliance could not be described as exaggerated at all. It was even far from enough. Although such a lineup was enough to deal with ordinary bandits, it was far from enough to deal with evil monsters. This was an era that was filled with monsters. Miss Tsukihime, we have entered Unripe Rice Village. A samurai of the main family came to the carriage. Zixing opened the curtains and saw the tenant farmers who were working in the paddy field next to them. At this time, they were looking at them in amazement. Zixing ordered, Call one of them over. I have something to ask. Yes. The samurai nodded and rode to the paddy field. Soon after, the samurai of the main family returned with a panicked but calm middle-aged tenant farmer. Answer Miss Tsukihime's question properly. Yes, Lord. The tenant farmer didn't even dare to raise his head and knelt directly in front of the carriage. Madame Purple Star was unfazed by such a gesture. As a true monster and the proud young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, she was a respectable existence. She had seen too many of her own kind kneeling before her, let alone ignorant humans. Where's Nagato's house? Zixing asked directly. The tenant farmer quickly said, It's just ahead, about 3 miles away. The tenant farmer said carefully, fearing that he would say something wrong. He really couldn't understand who would look for Master Nagato. Looking at the convoy's reliance, it was much more impressive than Master Nagato's house. Zixing quickly nodded and waved her hand to let the samurai take the tenant down. Then, she ordered another samurai in front to go to Nagato's house. "This is your reward." The samurai threw a little money in front of the tenant farmer. The tenant farmer naturally gratefully took it with both hands and watched the team slowly leave. It was just that the tenant farmer looked at the heavy, small money bag in his hand. He should have been happy, but he couldn't be happy. He shook his head and casually threw the money pouch into the basket. He just left it beside the paddy field, not afraid that someone would secretly take it away. For the people of Unripe Rice Village, no amount of wealth was comparable to 3 meals a day. After all, they couldn't leave the village. And in the village, they were already self-sufficient. There was nothing they could desire. Nagato family mansion. When the Kondo family's Tsukiheim's team stopped in front of the door, they saw Master Nagato and others standing in front of the door. Some of the servants even had a hint of hurry. They were not prepared for such a greeting. "Are you the head of the Nagato family?" The samurai of the Kondo family stepped forward and asked arrogantly. Master Nagato nodded respectfully and quickly said, "I didn't know that Miss Tsukiheim would come." But the servant saw the family emblem of the Kondo family from afar and came to report, so he hurriedly led the family to greet them. However, in a very short time, so many people were able to gather and greet them. Although it didn't seem neat, it was still acceptable. The samurai of the Kondo family probably knew this, so he didn't blame them too much. He just nodded proudly, then said, "Miss Tsukiheim plans to stay here for a few days. You go and prepare." Master Nagato naturally did not dare to disobey. He quickly ordered the servants to clean up the last room. He had to do this because the Kondo family owned the entire Mount Famine. They had a fief near Mount Famine. The place near Unripe Rice Village that the Nagato family obtained was also obtained by the ancestors from the Kondo family's reward. Speaking of which, the surname Nagato was also given by the Kondo family. Therefore, for the request of Miss Tsukiheim of the Kondo family, how could the Nagato family dare to say no? It's just, why did this high and mighty princess Tsukiheim suddenly come to such a remote place? Master Nagato frowned deeply because of this. He subconsciously thought of Saburo Nagato. Is it because of Saburo? Fortunately, after receiving the servant's report, he quickly asked Saburo Nagato to leave for a while, so he was not here. Saburo Nagato claimed that he was injured on the battlefield, so the commander ordered him to go home to recuperate. He was a samurai who had made meritorious service. But how could Saburo Nagato's wording be hidden from Master Nagato, who watched him grow up? Everything was just a lie of Saburo Nagato, a deserter on the battlefield. But since he already knew all this, in order to maintain the reputation of the Nagato family, Master Nagato had to cover up his identity as a deserter. As the head of the Nagato family, Master Nagato was almost the only person qualified to bring people for the Kondo family's princess. But despite this, Master Nagato still did not dare to walk side by side with Tsukiheim Kondo. Instead, he was slightly slower by half a step. In this era, the hierarchy was extremely strict. He did not dare to cross half a step, even if it was just a woman in front of him. "I don't know why Miss Tsukiheim came in person?" Master Nagato asked carefully. "Tsukiheim Kondo." Zixing just looked at the courtyard outside the corridor, seemingly unwilling to answer Master Nagato's question. At this time, Zixing suddenly stopped and said calmly, "Who is that?" In the courtyard, a little girl was squatting by the pond, and beside the little girl was a maid. Master Nagato looked and quickly lowered his head. "Miss Tsukiheim, that is Tsuruko, the daughter of my younger brother, Saburo." "Tsuruko? Tsuruko Nagato?" Zixing whispered the name. "It's Tsuruko Nagato, Miss Tsukiheim." Master Nagato quickly responded. Although he didn't know why the princess of the Kondo family would ask such an obvious question, he couldn't ignore the words of the princess of the Kondo family. He heard that the head of the Kondo family intended to choose a husband for Miss Tsukiheim. Of course, this husband couldn't get everything of the Kondo family, but their child had this qualification. So if Tsuruko... At this time, Master Nagato suddenly shouted, then waved his hand as if he wanted Tsuruko to come over, But he didn't expect the little girl to hide behind a maid. She only dared to poke out a small half of her head and looked at him timidly. Master Nagato frowned and saw that Miss Tsukiheim's expression was calm. She didn't seem to be unhappy, so he quickly said, "Miss Tsukiheim, please forgive me. Tsuruko is still young and doesn't know etiquette. I will discipline her in the future. However, I can guarantee that Tsuruko must not dislike Miss Tsukiheim. She is just a little afraid of strangers. This child has lost her mother since she was a child, and she has not been well taken care of, so her personality," Zixing said calmly. "Is she really just afraid of strangers?" Master Nagato met Miss Tsukiheim's gaze. Rumor had it that Miss Tsukiheim was weak, but her gaze was a bit sharper than the head of the Kondo family he saw when he was young. Could it be that the rumor was wrong? Zixing's words made Master Nagato feel overwhelmed. Master Nagato's gaze quickly turned. A servant of the Nagato family came in front of him, so he quickly said, "Miss Tsukiheim, the room has been cleaned up. Please come with me." Zixing flicked her sleeves and walked in front. Master Nagato secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but he waved to the maid in the courtyard and asked the maid to take Tsuruko Nagato away as soon as possible. At this time, Master Nagato also called another servant and whispered, "Hurry up and let Shinji come over. Remember to let him dress neatly and don't make a fool of himself." After giving the order, he quickly chased after Saburo Nagato. As for Saburo Nagato, since the welcome, Master Nagato once again asked the servant to remind him that it was best not to appear. Not many people knew that Saburo Nagato was a deserter. In this era where consultation was not developed, as long as the news was blocked well, it might be able to be hidden forever. However, the person who came was from the Kondo family after all. Master Nagato was afraid that the news would be leaked. This Miss Tsukiheim is not easy to deal with. Recalling Tsukiheim Kondo's gaze on him just now, Master Nagato couldn't help but look a little dignified. He thought about the various possibilities of this princess's arrival, and he was very irritated. Soon after, Zixing had settled down. At this time, Master Nagato was kneeling in front of Zixing. He lowered his gaze and quietly listened to the instructions of this big shot. Zixing asked calmly, "Master Nagato, I wonder if there are any outsiders in Unripe Rice Village recently." "Outsiders?" Master Nagato raised his head and asked carefully, "I wonder why Miss Tsukiheim asked this." "You just have to answer me." Master Nagato said slowly, "As far as I know, there are no outsiders. Unripe Rice Village is almost at the end of Famine Mountain. Even traveling merchants rarely come back." "Are you sure?" Zixing looked at Master Nagato again and asked, "It's this kind of gaze again. This kind of gaze is like looking down from the clouds." For some reason, Master Nagato's heart trembled slightly. He lowered his head and said, "Maybe there is. After all, I can't always pay attention to the road into the village. But Miss Tsukiheim, please rest assured. I will immediately order someone to go to the village and ask. I wonder if Miss Tsukiheim is looking for someone? If there are outsiders coming in these few days, or if there are outsiders in the village, bring them to see me." Zixing was too lazy to say more and directly ordered, "Yes." Master Nagato nodded quickly and agreed. At this time, a servant pushed the door open and knelt all the way to Master Nagato's ear. He whispered a few words. Master Nagato said seriously, "Miss Tsukiheim, it's my son. He is outside and wants to see you." "No need." Zixing waved her hand. "I'm tired. I want to rest. Don't let unnecessary people disturb me." This. Master Nagato suddenly hesitated, but the samurai of the Kondo family said solemnly at this time, "Nagato, didn't you hear Master Tsukiheim's order? Step back." Yes. Master Nagato could only leave respectfully. He couldn't resist the huge power of the Kondo family. Outside the door, Shinji Nagato frowned. When he was about to ask, Master Nagato scolded, "Get back." Shinji Nagato seemed to want to say something, but under Master Nagato's terrifying gaze, he finally clenched his fist. He didn't dare to walk with his father. He could only leave the yard alone from the other side. But after taking 2 steps, he saw his uncle, Saburo Nagato. "Uncle, why are you here?" Shinji Nagato asked puzzledly. He heard some news from the servants. It seemed that his father asked his uncle not to show up for the time being. Isn't it ugly? Saburo Nagato had a gloating expression on his face at this time. Uncle Saburo, what do you want to say? Shinji Nagato frowned. He didn't like this uncle very much, especially after he returned from the battlefield. Saburo Nagato shook his head. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your father. We came out of the Kondo family's lady's place just now. His face must have been ugly. Uncle Saburo, I don't think we should discuss my father here. Shinji Nagato still frowned. We shouldn't talk about the head of the Nagato family. This is a crime of disrespect. Also, Uncle Saburo, you smell of alcohol. Go back and rest. At this time, Saburo Nagato's face was full of whiskers. He leaned against the wall with a wine pot in his hand. His lapel was open, looking like a prodigal who wandered in the red light district. Saburo Nagato took a sip from the wine bottle, squinted his eyes as if he was enjoying it, and then smirked. Here, my elder brother is the sky. He has the absolute right to speak. No one in the entire Nagato family can go against him. However, his sky is still too small after all. When little Tion met big Tion, that was the only way. Shinji, look clearly. Your father is not as powerful and perfect as you think. Uncle Saburo, you are really drunk. Shinji Nagato's tone was heavy. Really? Saburo Nagato continued to smirk, but he staggered and walked. Maybe. Living here, sometimes it's better to be confused. Being too sober is. On the contrary, Shinji Nagato couldn't hear what he said later. Perhaps Saburo Nagato still had something to say. Seeing Saburo Nagato finally disappear at the end of the promenade, Shinji Nagato subconsciously recalled his father's exasperated expression just now. Too small a sky. Shinji Nagato was secretly distracted, but he suddenly felt his clothes being pulled by something. He looked back and found that it was Chizuko Nagato. The little girl only reached his waist. At this time, her small hand pulled his sleeve. Play with me. Go away. Shinji Nagato suddenly waved his hand and slapped Chizuko's hand away. Chizuko Nagato screamed in pain, and her frightened eyes began to mist. Shinji Nagato was irritated. He lifted his foot and kicked Chizuko Nagato to the ground. Chizuko Nagato rolled down the floor and into the courtyard outside the promenade. Ah, Miss Chizuko! The maid hurriedly ran over in horror and helped Chizuko Nagato, who was kicked to the ground, up. Chizuko Nagato's forehead was bright red. It was the wound caused by her forehead hitting the gravel when she landed. Master Shinji, Miss Chizuko is still young. She offended you. The maid hugged Chizuko Nagato and looked at the heir of the Nagato family with a trembling voice. Shinji Nagato said coldly, Woman, don't come out. Stay in the room. After that, Shinji Nagato flicked his sleeves and left. Miss Chizuko, are you okay? Hurry up. I'll take you back to bandage. The maid put Chizuko Nagato down and hurriedly tidied up Chizuko Nagato's clothes. She kept saying sadly, Really, how can I do this to you? Really, does it hurt? Shio, play with me. Blood flowed from Chizuko Nagato's forehead, falling from her eyebrows and forking at the bridge of her nose. It was like the curved water vein on the map. The maid, Shio, looked at it. Her nose was sour, and she hugged Chizuko Nagato tightly. She choked and said, Okay, Shio will play with Miss Chizuko. Zixing was meditating in the room. At this time, a samurai pushed the door open and knelt in the corridor outside the door. He said with a solemn expression, Master Tsukiheim, we found a peeper outside. Zixing slowly opened her eyes and frowned slightly. Peeper? Is it the Nagato family? Chapter 698. Under the cherry blossom tree on the hillside. Strictly speaking, this place was like the origin of the Yen Wuyue world, the jade pillar of heaven. Not only mortals, but even ordinary so-called gods could not set foot in this place. Even Izanagi or Izanami couldn't come here easily. Of course, Izanagi and Izanami wouldn't leave Yihironodon easily. Similarly, Erex couldn't step into Yihironodon easily. As early as when Erex invaded Yenwiyue and stole nearly one-third of the world's original rules, The two sides were already in an irreconcilable opposition. Erex, who was drinking black tea leisurely, was slightly awake at this time. A petite figure had already arrived under the cherry blossom tree. It was a young girl in a kimono, Mickey. However, Mickey was not the only one. At this time, Mickey was also holding another woman with both hands. A small katana was inserted in the chest position. It was Amaterasu Amakami, with a beautiful face. "How did you do it?" Erex asked curiously. He was not like a more leisurely boss who had the ability to know everything. Although he could guess it, he could not be detailed to every step. Okashime. Mickey looked a little proud and smiled slightly. She planned to go back and report. I intercepted her on the way, and then replaced her to approach Amaterasu. At the same time, Mickey released her hands forward. At this time, Amaterasu Amakami, who was held by her, slowly floated in front of Erex. It's also a masterpiece. Erex's fingers gently swept across the delicate face of Amaterasu Amakami, but he finally pulled out the small katana, inserted in Amaterasu's body. Mickey looked at Erex's action inexplicably and frowned. Erex-sama, Amaterasu inherited part of the world's authority of the two lords. Don't you intend to absorb it? You said that Amaterasu inherited the authority of Izanagi and Izanami. Since they're the source, it's really not good to take it now. Otherwise, it will be discovered immediately. Erex smiled slightly and let the sleeping Amaterasu's body sink to the ground. At this moment, roots slowly extended from the soil under the cherry blossom tree. The roots seemed to have a life of its own as it split open like the mouth of a beast. It swallowed Amaterasu, leaving only the head exposed. The tree root then stood upright, and then hardened, turning into a wooden pillar. Of course, it's not that I won't absorb it. It's just that it's not time yet. Erex looked at it, as if he was looking at another masterpiece. He suddenly sighed and said, "If we had more time, we could have done it more foolproof." But I didn't expect him to come so suddenly. Mickey frowned. "Araikal-sama, are you talking about that businessman?" Erex sat down again and said slowly, "You know, my original plan was to slowly devour Yin Wuyue's world. This is the safest way. But since he's here, then even the safest method will be full of variables." Mickey shook her head. Erex said indifferently, "Or that place only helps customers. That is to say, no one will help. If I don't take action in advance, the guy in Yahiro Dano's perception of Yin Wuyue's world will soon discover the arrival of this boss. If they reach a deal earlier than me, I'm afraid my efforts during this period will be in vain." Erex shook his head. He seemed a little discouraged, but it was more of a kind of helplessness, so I have to give up part of the benefits, and I even need to advance my plan for this. "Araikal-sama, is that person really powerful here? Even you?" Mickey looked at him with doubts. She had walked to Erex and sat down. She rested her chin on her hands like a lotus flower and looked at him. "You don't understand." Erex shook his head and suddenly reached out to tidy up Mickey's bangs. "It's a mess." "It doesn't matter." Mickey said indifferently, but she was enjoying it. She then looked at Amaterasu Amakami sleeping in the cherry blossom tree root and suddenly said, "Araikal-sama, do you need to get Tsukuyumi and Susanoo together? I need you to become Amaterasu temporarily." Erex said, "Since Izanagi and Izanami intend to let Sanguiko take the lead to deal with me, how can I destroy this good thing?" Mickey said, "I will definitely help Araikal-sama fulfill your wish and successfully obtain Yin Wuyue's world. Then I'll leave it to you." Mickey is really reliable. Erex smiled gently, then said, "Before leaving, go and eat something." The girl raised her head with a happy face. Watching Mickey leave, Erex whispered to himself, "It's a pity that you didn't really kill Oziu Shimaheim. After all, she still lacks experience. This is the so-called variable." He sighed faintly. "Then Mickey, to what extent can you do for me?" He suddenly took out the gift from the club owner. His fingers wrapped around the ribbon used for the packaging, hesitating whether to open it and take a look. Simply giving gifts to old customers. This was something that the previous owner would never do. Now the young new owner couldn't see it clearly. "If it's a surprise, I'll leave it for last." If it's not a surprise, opening it now will affect my mood. At the same time, in a room in the Nagato family, the samurai named Sasaki Kojiro was tied up at this time. He was pressed to the ground by a samurai of the Kondo family. Don't try to struggle. Raise your head. The samurai of the Kondo family said fiercely at this time. Speak. Who the hell sent you here? Is it the Nagato family? What is your purpose? Listen well, if you don't tell me, I'll let you experience what pain is. Sasaki Kojiro. Mo Xiaofei really raised his head at this time, looking at the calm woman sitting in front of him. She seems to be called Tsukihime Kondo. In his impression, this Tsukihime Kondo should also be one of the plot characters in the movie. But it's not right. This plot character shouldn't appear in Unripe Rice Village. According to the plot Mo Xiaofei knew, the modern heroine who transmigrated here did not appear in Unripe Rice Village at first, but somewhere else. The heroine would pass through the Kondo family's castle, and then it would be the popular scene of showing off with modern knowledge. Kondo Tsukihime's malnutrition and poor appetite were cured. So, why did Kondo Tsukihime come to Unripe Rice Village? Sure enough, only the characters were similar here, but the development was completely different. So, did the heroine in the movie exist in this world? In Mo Xiaofei's eyes, there was a hint of tiredness that was easy to see. At this time, the samurai of the Kondo family saw that the peeper didn't speak for a long time, so he planned to use some necessary means. Since you are so stubborn, don't blame me for being rude. The samurai sneered. Mo Xiaofei's head was pressed to the ground at this time. He struggled, but he suddenly shouted, Narakami Kuna, do you know her? I don't know what you were talking about. The samurai of the Kondo family snorted coldly and directly reached out to press Mo Xiaofei's neck. Wait a minute. Unexpectedly, Miss Tsukihime of the Kondo family said calmly at this time, don't do it first. I have some questions to ask. Yes. The samurai naturally would not disobey Miss Tsukihime's order and directly lifted Mo Xiaofei up. Tsukihime Kondo said calmly at this time, Narakami Kuna, who is she to you? The heroine really appeared. It seems that she has an intersection with Miss Tsukihime Kondo, or this Tsukihime Kondo is actually... Mo Xiaofei frowned and quickly thought about various possibilities. In the end, he decided to take a gamble. He took a deep breath and said, Mo Xiaofei. Tsukihime Kondo did not have the slightest expression. Chase, Zhuifan. Mo Xiaofei tried again. However, Tsukihime Kondo's expression still did not change. Instead, she frowned. I don't know what you're talking about, but obviously this is not an answer to my question. Tsukihime Kondo shook her head and waved her hand directly. Take him down first. Watch him carefully. Don't let him run away. The samurai nodded immediately, then hurriedly asked, Miss Tsukihime, about the Nagato family. After all, this was caught in the Nagato family. The Nagato family must be involved. Don't alert the enemy first. Tsukihime Kondo said calmly. You and Zwabingwei check around later. This peeper will be guarded by the samurai. We will interrogate him later. Yes. Mo Xiaofei was carried away by the samurai of the Kondo family. He didn't seem to be afraid, but he looked tired. He was quickly taken to another room and was guarded by 2 samurai of the Kondo family. But Mo Xiaofei did not think of a way to escape. He just lay on the ground and closed his eyes. Soon after, Mo Xiaofei heard the sound of the door opening and the voice of Tsukihime Kondo. You all go out first. I want to interrogate this prisoner personally. But Miss Tsukihime, it's okay. Tie him to the pillar and make him unable to move. Yes. When Tsukihime Kondo walked in front of Mo Xiaofei had been tied up with a rope. He really couldn't move at all. Tsukihime Kondo sized him up and suddenly asked in a low voice, Cinema. Mo Xiaofei originally didn't want to talk to this domineering young lady, but after hearing this, he opened his mouth and was quite excited. What happened to you? Are you Sir Mo? Or Zhuifeng? I'm Mo Xiaofei. Sure enough. Zixing heaved a sigh of relief at this time, then looked back at the paper door behind her. She squatted down carefully, untied the rope on Mo Xiaofei, and whispered again, Master Mo, please don't blame me. Although these warriors of the Kondo family obey my orders, they're also suspected of spying on you. If I suddenly recognize you, it will be strange. You and I are both trapped in this strange world. We need to be careful about everything until we find out the truth. I didn't consider this. And Mo Xiaofei shook his head with a wry smile, then sighed hard. I thought I would never meet an acquaintance again in my life. Zixing nodded. She had thoroughly felt the hesitation of suddenly becoming another person and being in a completely strange world. So she comforted, at least we have recognized each other, and it has only been a few days. Sir Mo, please don't worry too much. We will definitely find a solution. And Mo Xiaofei looked at her in a daze. A few days? Do you know how many days I have been here? Zixing asked subconsciously. A few days. And Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath. A year. I have been in this place for a whole year. Moreover, I've been spending the same day over and over again. Do you know? How is this possible? Zixing was shocked. And Mo Xiaofei said tiredly, but the truth is in front of me. This year is like a nightmare that I will never wake up from. Until you appear. Do you know? In the years since I reincarnated on the same day, this is the first time you have appeared here. I almost collapsed. Otherwise, I wouldn't have approached here so impulsively. Zixing was silent for a moment. She could see that Mo Xiaofei was not lying. Since he was not lying, repeating the same nightmare for a whole year was indeed a great mental torture. Sir Mo, I am very sympathetic to your experience. Zixing said seriously. However, can you explain what you have encountered? The dungeon. And Mo Xiaofei suddenly became excited. The crazy woman locked in the dungeon. It's her. I can feel that the root of this nightmare. No, it's the starting point. The starting point is also the end. She is the beginning and end of this recurring nightmare. It's her. It's her. In this year, I have been in contact with her every day. Every time, I return to the beginning. It's her. It's her. Definitely. Sir Mo, please calm down. Seeing Mo Xiaofei standing up with his eyes wide open and a ferocious look on his face, Purple Star reached out and pressed his shoulders. You're not alone. I'm already here. So calm down. I'm sorry. And Mo Xiaofei rubbed his forehead hard. I really can't control myself recently. I'm sorry. He took a few deep breaths and finally forced himself to calm down. Yes, I need to calm down. Let me think about it. My memory is too chaotic. Let me think about it. Looking at the pale Mo Xiaofei, Zixing felt that this matter was getting weirder and weirder. The woman locked in the dungeon is probably Saburo Nagato's wife. And Mo Xiaofei suddenly raised his head this time and stared at Kondo Tsukihime. I have inquired countless times and finally came to this conclusion. If Fumi or Susanoo of the three noble sons of Yenwuyue were here, they would recognize at a glance that the woman in front of them was Amaterasu Omikami. Of course, if the two of the three noble sons were here, they probably wouldn't know who the other man and woman standing there were. It was halfway up the mountain where the unripe rice village shrine was located. To be precise, it was on the long stone steps, just past the vermilion torii. At this time, Boss Luo and Miss May just came down. Not long after Zhuefeng was scared away by the Miko's arrow. What's the matter? Boss Luo looked at the ancient costume beauty standing in front of him and asked politely. But this Amaterasu Omikami sneered at this time. With just a wave of her hand, the trees on both sides of the stone steps grew wildly, directly oppressing Boss Luo and Miss Maid. Aren't you afraid that Eric will be angry? You should be the one on the cherry tree before, right? How should I address this young lady? Boss Luo still didn't move. The frantically oppressing trees stopped at once, and then slowly returned to their original appearance. Amaterasu Omikami had a strange smile at this time. She slowly said, I just came to see if you, who made Sir Eric pay such a high price, have the ability to help him. Oh, Luochio asked curiously. Mr. Eric, are you questioning me? That's really the first time I met you. It's not Sir Eric. Amaterasu Omikami snorted coldly. It's just that I don't believe it. Moreover, you dare to take away Sir's box. The most important thing. Unforgivable. Luaccio shook his head and said, "We didn't take it away. We just pawned it here. After the transaction is completed, Mr. Eric can retrieve his box. Of course, the premise is that the agreed transaction fee is enough." Amaterasu Amakami stepped forward step by step, whether it's the box or the 1/3 of the world's true souls that Sir promised. You can't take them away in the end. Just be a good helper for Sir, or else I'll let you reincarnate in a nightmare, so painful that you'd rather die. At this time, Miss Maid loosened her hand, and a black flame appeared in her palm. That is to say, you intend to violate the spirit of the contract, right? Besides, no matter who you are, what you said just now was too rude. When was the last time he was unhappy? Chapter 699. Strictly speaking, Black Soul Envoy was a kind of salesperson. They had different personalities, so they generally had a high degree of freedom. Therefore, if a Black Soul Envoy encountered such a situation, the way to deal with it would be different. But if it was Miss Maid of the club, then there would be a way to deal with it. As a maid of the club, serving the master and protecting the safety and dignity of the master was something that had to be obeyed and was equivalent to an instinctive behavior. Even if ye could guess, with Erex's understanding of the club, how abnormal it was for him to allow a subordinate to provoke the club. Would Erex have such poor control over his subordinates? Would this guy who had swallowed countless nightmares and knew the evil of people's hearts calculate the thoughts of his subordinates? Probably not. Did he have a plan in mind? Was there another purpose behind it? What did it matter? 100 years ago, some people who overestimated themselves thought that they could destroy the club by mobilizing all the forces that could be mobilized. In fact, it was just the previous owner who cultivated them. Cultivating them was just for better harvest. A large number of Black Soul Envoys died in the battle. It seemed that the club had suffered a great loss, but for the club, those dead Black Soul Envoys were only at the level of cannon fodder. It was just an alternative recycling of the achievements of the previous owner. Maybe the current owner wouldn't use the same operation method, or maybe the current owner wouldn't follow the path of the previous owner. There were many more possibilities, but what did it matter? Yi only knew one thing. Her current owner was violated, even if it was only in words. But since he could say such words, it also meant that he had such thoughts. Whether it was just a deliberate probe or a real malicious intention, it didn't matter. The black flames scattered in Ye's hand formed a long and narrow cross-shaped sword, and the so-called battle was almost completed in an instant. Amaterasu Amakami only walked on the first step of the stone steps. Yes, she only lifted her leg and stepped on the first step. Her attacks and various means were still in preparation. Maybe if she was given one more second, or even half a second, some good attacking means could be launched. But that was the fact, as if there was no such thing as reason that could be explained clearly. The crossed sword formed by the black flames had pierced through the shoulder of Amaterasu Amakami. Amaterasu Amakami's eyes widened. In that instant, it was as if all illusions had been broken. Her illusion had been broken, and she could no longer maintain the appearance of Amaterasu. She returned to her original appearance. She was a girl in a kimono, Mickey. The black flames in her body were erupting like a volcano, giving her the illusion that she would be incinerated in an instant. And yet, it wasn't just a single strike. Her left shoulder was pierced through, but her right shoulder was also pierced through at the same time. Then, there was a flash of black light, and her throat was also cut open at the same time. There were 3 different attacks, and they didn't seem to come one after the other. It was as if they were all happening at the same time, but there was only one enemy. Strictly speaking, Mickey didn't have a real physical body. She was born from nightmares and lived by devouring nightmares. She had many similarities with Erex. However, not to mention the terrible wounds on her left and right shoulders, the moment her throat was cut open, Mickey couldn't even make sound. What was erased wasn't her ability to speak on the surface. It was even her ability to communicate with all the sounds in her origin. The girl in a kimono fell to her knees on the stairs in unprecedented horror. The black flames scattered by Miss Maid had been withdrawn. She glanced at Mickey expressionlessly. "You said too much that you shouldn't say. Please pay attention to it next time. If you do it again, I can only erase you from the origin. Miss Maid glanced forward again and said indifferently, Mr. Arex, please take care of your people. The modesty was only because the other party was a guest of the club, a guest in the process of transaction. That was all. Sure. Arex's figure came from the void. As an invader who owned almost 1/3 of Yen Wuyue's world, theoretically, there was no place in Yen Wuyue's world that could stop his arrival. I'm really sorry. Arex came to Mickey's side. I spoiled this child. Sometimes she really does something out of line. But after that, Yu just walked directly behind Luochio because the so-called apology should be to her master, not her. She didn't need to steal the limelight of the host. In this case, I won't heal this lady's injury. Luochio nodded. Although it was just a little effort, it would consume his lifespan after all. Even if his current lifespan could probably be wasted, Yu would not be happy. It's my pleasure. Arex glanced at Mickey. The seriously injured girl in a kimono showed a complicated and annoyed look at this time. About this collision, it's indeed my fault. Arex gently shook his head towards Mickey. In order to express my apology, after this transaction is completed, I will add 50 true souls to the original transaction fee as an apology. Luochio didn't refuse, smiling and saying, Thank you very much. If the customer was satisfied and wanted to give more, there was no reason not to take it. Naturally, he would take it. Otherwise, he wouldn't give face to the club, right? The club was the most considerate of the customers. 2 days later, it's the appointed time to take action. Arex held Mickey up at this time, glancing at Luochio. I look forward to our pleasant cooperation. Arex didn't show any angry expression until he left. At this time, the servant girl suddenly said, Master, the former master once said that Arex is actually a very suitable successor. But I don't like him. Don't like him. She already knew how to express her feelings in this way. I feel that we get along quite well. Although he's quite dark. Luochio just smiled and didn't make any more comments. That was the former master's consideration. It had nothing to do with him. Because he was the current owner, even the former master couldn't take it back. The identity of the owner only belonged to the current owner, unless Luochio took the initiative to give it up and transferred it through other means. With that said, Luochio turned around and looked at the end of the stone steps. At the end of the road leading to the shrine, a slightly thin figure stood quietly. It was the shrine's witch. She lowered her head and looked at him quietly. When Boss Luo turned around to look at her, their eyes met unexpectedly. After that, the witch turned around and left without saying anything. She probably isn't looking at me. Boss Luo smiled slightly. The moment his palm flipped, a black card appeared and then disappeared. Yi then glanced at the unripe rice village at the foot of the mountain, but she shook her head. It's a pity. If this Nagato family is real, there are many suitable investors. I kind of want to open Arex's box. Luochio shook his head. Unfortunately, this is only a temporary collateral. Zhuefeng, let's send the gift to Zhuefeng since he didn't enter the village. Okay. The maid smiled elegantly. Today, before entering the movie, Yen Wuyue World was to send gifts to the guests for Christmas Eve. You can't use your power? This was Zixing's question after listening to Mo Xiaofei's account of what happened a year ago and all the information collected in this year. It didn't take much time to sort out these materials. Most of the time was actually used to soothe Mo Xiaofei's spirit, mania. In this year's reincarnation, Mo Xiaofei became inexplicably manic. But with the passage of time, Mo Xiaofei would gradually return to normal. Being trapped in such a nightmare reincarnation, he had not lost his mind so far. It was enough to show that the will of Dragon Lord's disciple was very strong. It should be from a moment I fell into the trap of the Nagato family. Mo Xiaofei recalled carefully. It should be from then on that my power began to weaken. It didn't disappear until I came into contact with the crazy woman in the dungeon. But I vaguely feel that my power is not erased, but suppressed by something. From the first day of reincarnation, it was naturally not convenient for Mo Xiaofei, who had no power, to do whatever he wanted. After going through the first few reincarnations, Mo Xiaofei began to master some of the characteristics of his reincarnation. Once he came into contact with the crazy woman in the dungeon, reincarnation would start. Once he died, reincarnation would also start. If he did nothing and hid in the unripe rice village, reincarnation would also start within 7 days. If I didn't guess wrong, you and I should have come to this world at the same time. Zixing pondered at this time. Lord Mo has reincarnated here for a year. It seems that time has not moved forward, but in fact, I have already arrived. So, time should be passing, but your time in the unripe rice village has become extremely slow. 1 day in heaven, 1 year on earth. Heaven on earth. But I am more worried about you. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. I'm afraid that even if you come, you will repeat the same cycle as me. At this time, he is still concerned about me being trapped in reincarnation. Zixing frowned slightly. Isn't this dragon lord's disciple too kind? This needs to be tried before you know. Zixing pondered for a while. Fortunately, Lord Mo's memory won't disappear. Although this is the source of the pain, it is not the key to breaking the situation. At the very least, you can continue to accumulate information about the unripe rice village. I'm afraid that if I fall into reincarnation like you, but I can't keep this part of my memory, it will be too troublesome. Because every time, you have to convince me. Why don't you tell me something special as a secret signal? Mo Xiaofei thought for a moment and asked. Zhenlong. Zixing said coldly. Zhenlong. Mo Xiaofei was taken aback. It sounds like a name. Is it your name? Speaking of which, Zhuifeng doesn't seem to have officially told me what your name is. Zixing said calmly. Just treat it as a code name. If I lose my memory and you need to convince me, as long as you say this code name, I will believe you. I understand. Mo Xiaofei nodded. What about the so-called Zhongzhou goddess? Zixing asked quickly. Mo Xiaofei shrugged and said, the goddess will lose her memory every time. In the beginning, I could still be patient and let her believe me again and again. In the end, I didn't bother to pay attention to her. At this time, she should start to panic about losing her power again, and then carefully inquire about my information. Anyway, she does the same thing every time. Mo Xiaofei shook his head and said, instead of wasting time convincing her from the beginning, it's better to find the key to breaking the situation directly. It's a pity that even so, there is no result so far. He didn't want to play with this girl, but he was helpless. It's already very difficult to get the information of all the people in this village. Zixing looked at Mo Xiaofei sympathetically. By the way, why did you come back this time? Fuji. Zixing said calmly. It's a Fuji. When I was watching the movie, I started to lose focus when I saw Fuji. I suspect that this time is related to this Fuji, so I came to the unripe rice village. In the movie, Fuji was written by the possessed heroine Narukami Kuna, so I think the key is probably on the heroine. But from the beginning to the end, Narukami Kuna has never appeared. Mo Xiaofei said seriously. In this year, you are the only person who entered the unripe rice village. If your guess is right, the reincarnation time of unripe rice village is actually flowing. But if it's so slow, I'm afraid we have to wait for decades or even hundreds of years to wait for Narukami Kuna to appear. If this is the case, then I'm afraid we will all completely go crazy. Zixing voiced the worry in Mo Xiaofei's heart, and she became extremely solemn. The reincarnation time is 100 years. This greedy wolf, clan young master, didn't know if he could hold on. After a moment of silence, Zixing suggested, anyway, I want to contact the crazy woman under the dungeon first to see what's going on. That mechanism is not easy to get in. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. Every time I want to go in, I will alarm the Nagato family. There were several times when I was killed directly and reincarnated directly. Leave it to me this time. Zixing said indifferently. Now, the identity of Tsukihime Kondo is still useful. Mo Xiaofei nodded, but he thought that he finally met a companion. He didn't know where Zhuifeng and the class monitor were at this time. Under the cherry tree, Arex extracted a thick grayish-black mist from the void and injected it into Miyoshi's body. The wound on her shoulder as well as the even more terrifying wound on her throat, began to slowly heal. Missy's black flame is a terrifying thing that can directly calcine the soul. Even in the main world, there are not many things that can resist it. Moreover, it can only resist it. Erex shook his head. You have to be more patient. The nightmare extracted from unripe rice village will help you recover as soon as possible. Recalling the moment when she couldn't resist at all in front of that woman, Miyoshi's face turned pale. Miyoshi spoke with difficulty. I'm sorry, Erex-sama. Miyoshi is incompetent. Erex shook his head and said, I know your character. It's my fault for not considering this. Forget it. It's over anyway. The most important thing now is for you to recover. But because of Miyoshi, sir, you lost another 50 true souls. Miyoshi lowered her head deeply. Erex smiled slightly and said, Even if I exchange all my true souls, I can't bear to part with you. Erex-sama, Chapter 700. Half-demons, as the name suggested, were only half-demons. And because the body had the relationship of a human, it was closer to the appearance of a human from the moment it was born. That's why it didn't. Most half-demons could be described as ugly. There were even some who looked neither human nor demon. They walked around with a horrifying appearance, causing humans to be afraid of them. Pure demons did not intend to accept them. After all, most half-demons were born because they could not control their lower bodies. It was almost impossible to take responsibility for a monster that had sex with a human for the sole purpose of venting and accidentally left behind a descendant. Ouch! Ouch! Damn woman! Can't you go easy on me? The red-robed half-demon stared at the witch who was a head shorter than him with dissatisfaction. The half-demon youth muttered in his heart, Too small, there's not much meat to eat. Although it's very tender, it doesn't have much bite. Why is it so thin? It probably won't taste good. Although, the half-demon youth had never eaten a transvestite before. If you didn't help me fight off that toad, I wouldn't even want to treat you. She was a head shorter than the half-demon youth. She looked like she was only a little over 10 years old. Although the childish look on her face did not fade away, she spoke like an old woman. This made the half-demon youth gnash his teeth in anger. But there was no other way. He could not beat her. She was only 10.5 years old. What the hell? As a half-demon, he had seen the winter snow 16 times. After the spring and cherry blossom season next year, he would welcome the 17th winter snow, right? That toad will come again. The half-demon youth obviously did not want to dwell too much on the little witch's wound bandaging technique. He changed the topic to another matter. There was a mysterious power hidden in the ancient shrine in front of him. This power could completely awaken the half-demon's demon blood. When the demon blood was completely awakened, the half-demon youth could be called a demon youth. This was his dream since he was born. The toad seemed to have the same plan, so it came to attack. Should he take advantage of the time when Little Witch is fighting with that stinky toad to steal the mysterious energy from the shrine? The half-demon youth looked at Little Witch who was pounding the herbs, and a trace of evil thoughts gradually grew in his mind. How could this be considered evil? He was a monster, even if he was only a half-monster. Have you always lived in this place? The half-demon boy couldn't help but ask with a frown. She was too young. Wouldn't it be too spacious for her to live alone in such a shrine? Where are your relatives? You have too many questions. Little Witch raised her head and pressed the crushed herbs onto the last wound on the half-demon youth's arm. Then, she rolled it up a few times with a white cloth in disgust. You can leave now. Don't come back again. Otherwise, I will kill you. But it wasn't scary at all. As expected, it was still because she was too young, even if she tried so hard to pretend to be cold. However, even though it was small, the spiritual energy that it emanated was simply too powerful. The half-monster youth had no choice but to back off a little. I will come again. I will definitely obtain the power here and become a real monster. Just wait and see. The half-monster youth fled from the shrine in a panic. Spring passed and autumn came. It was the 17th winter. The half-monster youth once again came to the shrine halfway up the mountain. Little Witch had grown a little taller, but she was still as skinny as before. The half-monster youth, who felt that he had become much stronger, hid outside the shrine and peeped. Little Witch was kneeling in the shrine, writing and reading. She seemed to be so focused that she didn't notice his arrival. This was a good opportunity. The half-monster youth's face was filled with excitement. He knew that the center of the shrine's main hall was enshrined with that mysterious power. Taking advantage of Little Witch's absence, the half-monster youth easily arrived in front of the altar. However, the half-monster youth didn't seem to think of one thing. How could Little Witch, who had such powerful spiritual energy, be so careless with the thing she was guarding? There were many hidden runes set up in front of the divine altar. When Little Witch put down the book in her hand and arrived at the shrine's main hall, the half-monster youth had already fallen into a trap and couldn't move. "It's you again." Little Witch frowned. "I told you, if you dare to come again, I'll kill you." The half-monster youth struggled madly, revealing his ferocious fangs. If Little Witch said she would kill him, then she would really kill him. This was because he heard that the toad had been killed. Although it was said that toads were long-lived, they would still die in the end. However, the half-monster youth still couldn't break free from the trap set by Little Witch. The moment Little Witch knocked the arrow on the longbow, the half-monster youth suddenly gave up struggling. Perhaps death was another kind of release. "Do you want to die?" Little Witch's fingers slowed down, but she didn't release the bowstring. "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Damn, woman, if you want to kill me, just kill me." The half-monster youth instantly roared. Little Witch asked curiously, "Why do you want the thing enshrined in the shrine?" The half-monster youth said that he wanted to become a real monster. Little Witch untied the bindings and told him to leave and never come again. "I'll come again." The half-monster youth ran away. In the end, he let out an indignant voice at the foot of the mountain. "I'll defeat you with my own hands. I'll make you give the thing to me willingly." "Don't come again," Little Witch said silently on the mountain. Spring left and autumn came again. The half-monster youth's 18th year lead on. A scar appeared on the half-monster youth's face. After a year of training, he felt that he had become much stronger. Little Witch was still in the shrine, writing and reading. It was cold and cheerless. "Damn, woman, this time I'll definitely." This time, the half-monster youth was directly thrown down from the shrine. To be precise, he rolled down the long stone stairs. However, he still didn't want to give up. Then, he would go out and train for another month. "Damn, woman, this time I'm different from before." Roll down. "Damn, woman, this time I'll definitely." Roll down. "Damn, woman." Roll down. Every time, it seemed to be tougher than a rock. Roll down. "Please, lend me the power of the shrine, as long as I can become a real monster. No matter what you want me to do, I'll agree to it." Finally, the half-monster youth lowered his head in front of the shrine. The horns on his body seemed to have been worn down by the rolling down the stairs. He really couldn't beat the shrine's guardian witch. "Why are you so determined to become a real monster?" Little Witch asked after thinking for a while. "That guy." The half-monster youth gritted his teeth and said, "That guy. No matter what, I'll defeat him and make him admit his mistake in front of my mother. For this purpose, I can give up anything." "Mother?" Little Witch furrowed her brows. "Your demonic blood came from father?" The half-monster youth tilted his head. "He's called Divine General Dog. My mother was taken away by him. After giving birth to me, he abandoned us. It's because my mother was just a tool for fun. It's because I can't inherit the blood of a real monster. I'm just a half-monster. I can't even see the light. I even made that guy a joke for other monsters." Little Witch pondered for a long time and finally shook her head. "You have too much blood on you. If you become a real monster, it'll only bring more deaths. I've only killed bandits and monsters that only know how to rob." The half-monster youth stared at Little Witch in front of him. "I've never eaten a human." "All right, then," Little Witch said calmly. "Go and kill 100 big monsters that do evil, and collect 100 different ancient books and bring them to me. I can promise to help you become a real monster." She gave him a mission that was almost impossible to complete. 100 big monsters could be determined from the remaining monster energy, but 100 different ancient books. It was up to her whether it counted or not. 100 big monsters, 100 different ancient books. The half-monster youth gritted his teeth and turned to leave. It's a deal. Another month later, the half-monster youth sat in front of the shrine proudly, placing the relics of the 3 big monsters and more than 10 ancient books on the ground. I'll keep my word. I did it. There are still 97 big monsters and 86 ancient books. Little Witch glanced at the half-monster youth's trophies indifferently. What? There should be 85 books left. 2 of them are duplicates. Little Witch shook her head. Can't you read? The half-monster youth gritted his teeth and finally left. I'll come back in a month. Little Witch still shook her head and looked at the things scattered on the ground. She silently picked up the things left by the big monsters and purified them. Then, she picked up the ancient books and returned to her room. It was like a library with the smell of paper and ink. Her body seemed to be stained with this smell. Little Witch began to read the ancient books that she had never read. Suddenly, she lowered her head and smiled. Her knowledge and experience of the outside world all came from the books here. The world of books was as vast as the ocean. What kind of wonderful world would he bring next time? Little Witch quietly wrote the half-monster youth's name on the white paper. It was a beautiful handwriting. Inuyasha. Zhuefeng rubbed his head. He accidentally fell from the branch after turning sideways. Zhuefeng couldn't figure out why he chose to sleep on the branch. Maybe it was the hobby of this body. However, it seemed that he had a dream as a bystander. Maybe it was the remnant of a little memory of the original owner of this body. What is this? Zhuefeng stared at something on the ground in confusion. Just in front of the place where he fell from the tree, there was a small box. Zhuefeng was familiar with such a box tied with a ribbon. But when did it appear? Even if he fell asleep, no one should have come here. At least he, who had a keen sense of smell, couldn't smell anything strange at this time. Zhuefeng frowned, so he picked up the box directly. After shaking it a few times, he felt that it seemed to be empty. There was nothing inside. He couldn't help but feel even more strange. In the end, he couldn't hold himself back and tore open the box. However, he didn't get anything from it. There was only a strange, illusory mass of air in front of him, or rather, it was more like a translucent white ball of light. What the hell? Zhuefeng scratched his head and stretched out his hand to flatten this ball of air. He felt like he couldn't stop. However, when he threw this strange ball of light on the ground, this thing automatically flew back to him. Even when he threw the ball of light far away, this thing still came back to him immediately. It seemed that it was going to stick to him like this. This thing. Zhuefeng frowned and finally grabbed this ball of light in the palm of his hand. There was a strange but indescribable feeling. Forget it. I don't care. Let's go find Purple Star. Zhuefeng jumped directly on the top of a big tree and looked around. What surprised him was that he had already seen the stone tablet of Unripe Rice Village, but he didn't see a place similar to a village nearby. The Nagato family was a wealthy family in a small place with strict family rules. Of course, such a wealthy family might be the size of a sesame seed among all the fiefs of the Kondo family. The direct descendants of the Nagato family were already sitting upright, preparing for lunch for the day. Shinji Nagato and Saburo Nagato sat facing each other. In the seat above, the empty seat was exclusive to Master Nagato. Next to him was Master Nagato's wife. At this time, Master Nagato's wife was already there. Below, starting from Shinji Nagato and Saburo Nagato, there were the members of the Nagato family. There was Master Nagato's sister, Nagato Kiko, as well as the son-in-law, Sakamoto Ryota, Nagato Kiko's son, Sakamoto Taichi, and his daughter-in-law. On the opposite side was the youngest, Chizuko Nagato. The family was silent. Even if there was food in front of them, and the food was probably cold, they didn't move because Master Nagato had not arrived yet. Eating before the family master was an act of contempt for the family master's authority. The mistress of the Nagato family was already old. At this time, she lowered her eyebrows and waited quietly. When she heard footsteps coming from outside the door, she quickly stood up, opened the door for her husband, Master Nagato, and waited for him to sit down. When Master Nagato sat down, he glanced at everyone present. Finally, he He saw Chizuko Nagato at the end with a bandage on her forehead. He frowned and said, "What's the matter?" It seems that when Shizuko was playing in the courtyard, she accidentally fell and knocked her head. Master Nagato's wife whispered at this time. I remember that Shio took care of her. Master Nagato said calmly, "Go back and punish her." Chapter 701. Died of illness? Zixing and Mo Xiaofei were still discussing the details of entering the Nagato family's underground prison. Naturally, they inevitably discussed the true identity of the crazy woman trapped in the dungeon. It is claimed to be so, but it is not the case. Mo Xiaofei frowned, as if recalling those chaotic memories. But as for the reason, no matter how I probe this year, there is no way to find out. But there is only one thing that can be confirmed. That is, only Master Nagato, Shinji Nagato, and Saburo Nagato know that this crazy woman is hidden in the Nagato family's dungeon. Zixing asked curiously, "How can Master Mo be so sure?" Mo Xiaofei said with a wry smile, "In this year's reincarnation, I have directly asked everyone in the Nagato family, including the lowest servants." Anyway, he had been loading the file all the time. After countless times of seeking death, Mo Xiaofei believed that he had grasped a lot of information. It was just that he still could not break the current deadlock. Let's not talk about Master Nagato and Shinji Nagato for the time being. Zixing frowned. Saburo Nagato can actually tolerate his wife being locked in the dungeon without seeing the sun? Mo Xiaofei said, "There is one thing that is strange. It's about Tsuruko Nagato." Pen spirit? Zixing raised her eyebrows. The one in the movie, I'm afraid that the world we are in now has seriously deviated from the plot of the movie. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. So if we keep using the plot as a reference, I'm afraid it's just a dead end in front of us. Then, what do you mean about Tsuruko Nagato? Tsuruko Nagato was born in November, Mo Xiaofei said seriously. But as far as I know, Saburo Nagato went to the battlefield around the new year of the same year. You want to say that Tsuruko Nagato is not Saburo Nagato's biological child? Zixing shook her head. There is not much difference in the world. If Saburo Nagato has slept with his wife before going to war, it is not impossible. Or, since he is going to war, it is more reasonable to be intimate with his wife before leaving. Although that is true, Mo Xiaofei nodded. There is a servant who is responsible for keeping watch at night. I used to tie him up quietly and beat him. After Saburo Nagato left, Master Nagato once quietly came to the place where Saburo Nagato lived late at night. Moreover, according to my observation, Saburo Nagato is not good to Chizuko Nagato. He even hates her. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. How can a parent hate their own child? You should have seen Chizuko Nagato, right? This little girl is so pretty. I like her from the bottom of my heart. Unfortunately, I couldn't get close to Saburo Nagato at all. Although he was often drunk, I tried to ask him when he was drunk, but unfortunately, I couldn't get anything out of him. Originally, if I hadn't met you this time, I would have caught Saburo Nagato. Mo Xiaofei didn't say what he would do after being caught. Zixing was smart enough not to ask further. If he hadn't gone mad after a year of reincarnation, or if he hadn't changed in the slightest, it would naturally be abnormal. Zixing could vaguely feel a trace of indifferent hostility from Mo Xiaofei, but she did not point it out immediately. She just said, "Then, what's the matter with the curse of the village? The village girl you mentioned, Take? This is what I want to talk about, the shameless, shady business of the Nagato family behind the scenes." Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath, and a terrifying, murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Shady business. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. I'm afraid it's hard to explain clearly. It's better to let you see it directly. You will have a more intuitive understanding. But first, you have to help me send Master Nagato away. Because the entrance to the mechanism is in the yard where he lives, even next to his bedroom. Master Nagato won't leave this place on weekdays. Even if he leaves, he will instruct the servants to watch and not allow anyone to approach. For many times, I took advantage of Master Nagato's absence to knock out the guards before sneaking into that place. Zixing nodded, then looked at the time and tied Mo Xiaofei with a rope again. It just looked like it was tied tightly on the outside, but it was just a rope. After the two discussed, the best time to sneak in was at night. When the daughter of the Kondo family arrived, the Nagato family naturally had to hold a grand reception for her. Master Nagato was already preparing a sumptuous dinner. Soon after, the samurai of the Kondo family, who were sent away by Zixing, returned after patrolling. They originally planned to interrogate Sasaki Kojuro, but they were summoned back by Miss Tsukihime. She told them to prepare and accompany her to attend the Nagato family's dinner. The interrogation was not urgent after the dinner. How could they not be anxious? How could the safety of Kondo Tsukihime be comparable to the dinner party in this small place? Under the powerful gaze of Kondo Tsukihime, the two samurai finally agreed. But this was also good, accompanying the lady to attend the dinner party, one on the left and one on the right. With their powerful force, they could resist any danger. Although Master Nagato is also a samurai, he is now old. How can he be their opponent? Zixing didn't care about the thoughts of the Kondo samurai. She waved her hand and called a maidservant in front of her. Take the veil and put on my clothes. Tonight, you will attend on my behalf. Zixing said calmly, remember not to speak. Just nod or shake your head. Miss, I dare not. How dare she pretend to be Tsukihime? I'm afraid this is a capital offense. You just have to do as I tell you. Zixing said in a deep voice. Otherwise, you'll be removed from the Kondo family. Then okay. Seeing the maid shivering and trying on the clothes, Zixing sighed secretly. If it weren't for the loss of demon beast power, why would it be so troublesome? Sit up straight. Don't lower your head. You are now Kondo Tsukihime. Show your aura. Okay. There were far more people than when the Nagato family had dinner. Because not only the Nagato family, but there were also some higher-ranking people in Unripe Rice Village. Of course, under the strict class system, Master Nagato had to give up the top position. His position was slightly moved to the bottom. Father, the servant said that Miss Tsukihime has left the room. Shinji Nagato whispered in Master Nagato's ear. Master Nagato nodded. Wait a moment. Remember to perform well. If you can become Miss Tsukihime's husband, then our Nagato family will never have to. In short, you are on your own. I understand, Father. Shinji Nagato nodded solemnly. Master Nagato suddenly said, there is one more thing. Tsuruko is your uncle's daughter and your sister. Even if there is anything, you shouldn't hurt her. Do you understand? The servant, Ashu, who took care of Miss Tsuruko inappropriately, was locked up and subjected to a lot of family discipline. He was afraid that she couldn't bear to tell the truth in the process of suffering. It was not difficult for Shinji Nagato to think of this. But, facing his father's reminder at this moment, Shinji Nagato clenched his fist. He took another deep breath and calmed down. I will pay attention next time, Father. Do you plan to have it next time? Master Nagato snorted coldly. Shinji Nagato panicked. No. At this time, the door opened. Kondo Tsukihime walked in slowly accompanied by two Kondo family samurai. Master Nagato quickly stood up. As soon as he got up, everyone present stood up one after another. Miss Tsukihime, what's wrong with you? Miss Tsukihime is not feeling well. The samurai on the left said calmly. So, you can only cover it with a veil. Nagato, even if Miss Tsukihime is ill, she still attends your banquet. This is your honor. Do you understand? Master Nagato was immediately grateful. As for Shinji Nagato, he also began to look for opportunities to leave a deep impression on the princess of the Kondo family. At the banquet, Kondo Tsukihime sat upright and did not say a word. Little cold hands. The wooden door creaked. This was the place where the Nagato family closed the disobedient servants. It was also the place where the firewood was piled. The maidservant, Ashu, was locked up here at this moment. She was not tied up, but there were many bruises on her arms. However, there were no traces of injury on her face. The door was not locked. There was no one guarding outside. However, Ashu did not dare to leave. If she left here without the master's instructions, she would end up even more miserable. The moment the door opened, Ashu quickly knelt on the ground, lowered her head, and said in horror, Ashu won't dare next time. I will take good care of Miss Tsuruko and not let her get hurt. Asha really won't dare. Master, please forgive me. Asha, what are you doing? It was Tsuruko Nagato's voice. Miss Tsuruko. Ashu raised her head in amazement. She saw Tsuruko Nagato carrying a lantern that was particularly large for her and holding a leaf of rice ball in her hand. She came to Ashu. Ashu, are you hungry? Miss Tsuruko, go away. Don't stay here. Otherwise, the master will scold you if he sees you. Ashu quickly looked outside the door. Seeing that there was no one outside, she relaxed a little. They are all eating. They won't come here. Tsuruko Nagato shook her head and opened the leaf slowly. Ashu, eat. I got it from the kitchen. Oh, is the master inviting the princess of the Kondo family? Ashu nodded. But, Miss Tsuruko, they don't let you attend? Tsuruko Nagato touched her bandaged forehead. They don't let me. They said it doesn't look good. Ashu took care of Tsuruko Nagato lovingly and carefully touched Tsuruko Nagato's forehead. Does it still hurt? Tsuruko Nagato shook her head and once again held the rice ball in front of Ashu. Ashu was moved and sad, but she took it. Tsuruko Nagato took out a book from her small kimono at this time and smiled. Ashu, read to me after you are full. Okay, Ashu will read to the miss. Mo Xiaofei, who was waiting quietly, suddenly heard the sound of something breaking outside the door. He immediately loosened the rope and opened the door to take a look. At first glance, he found that an Ishigaru who was guarding outside had fallen to the ground at this time, and the ground was full of fragments of flower pots. Mo Xiaofei looked at the girl standing next to him and couldn't help but be stunned. You don't have to be so ruthless, right? He's your subordinate, after all. He is Kondo Tsukiheim's subordinate, not mine. Zixing said calmly, let's not delay. Let's go immediately. The banquet should not take long. Mo Xiaofei nodded and said quickly, follow me. He led Zixing directly to the courtyard where Master Nagato lived and swaggered in. At this time, an angry voice came from inside. Stop. Who is it? Big brother, can you change the lines next time? Mo Xiaofei complained and then rushed up directly. In the next second, he heard a dull sound. The guard had fallen to the ground. Mo Xiaofei clapped his hands and then waved to the place where Zixing was hiding. You can come out now. As expected of Lord Mo, Zixing nodded. Mo Xiaofei shook his head and said, I have killed this guy dozens of times. I know where his weakness is. Although I can't use my original strength now, this Sasaki Kojiro's body is still very strong. Zixing didn't say anything and followed Mo Xiaofei into the room in the courtyard. Be careful. The first time I fell through the mechanism activated by Master Nagato. This place. The starting rope is hidden under the screen. Mo Xiaofei pointed to a tatami somewhere. Do you want to go down from here? Mo Xiaofei shook his head and said, I can't go down from here. There is a stone door below. I can't open it now, but there are actually other entrances. It's where Master Nagato sleeps. I found it later. Come with me. Mo Xiaofei quickly touched Master Nagato's bedroom, then twisted a vase placed in the corner, and the opposite wall loosened a little. Mo Xiaofei stepped forward and pushed the wall hard. The wall was pushed open. Zixing glanced at it, picked up an oil lamp, and lit it. She followed behind Mo Xiaofei. Behind the wall was a staircase that led downwards. What did the Nagato family build this underground prison for? Zixing couldn't help but ask curiously. This dungeon doesn't seem to be built by the Nagato family. Mo Xiaofei said slowly. Unripe Rice Village was occupied by a demon a long time ago. The demon built a dungeon here to lock up the captured people and use them as his food. Later, the demon was captured. Later, the ancestors of the Nagato family made contributions and were rewarded with Unripe Rice Village as their territory. I think this dungeon was discovered when the Nagato family's mansion was built. Then, the Nagato family transformed it into what it is now. Zixing nodded, and Mo Xiaofei suddenly said at this time, Speaking of which, the women born in Unripe Rice Village are very beautiful. Even if they are a little older, they can be described as charming, right? Lord Mo, I don't know what you want to say. Zixing didn't understand the meaning of Mo Xiaofei's words at this time. He didn't seem like a playboy who would keep silent about women. Have you seen the old people on the way here? Mo Xiaofei suddenly asked again, not the old man, but the old woman. Zixing frowned, but she recalled what she saw on the way. No, why? On the one hand, it's because in ancient times, the medical technology is not better. People have shorter lives. Mo Xiaofei said indifferently. On the other hand, it's man-made. Do you remember the curse I told you about? Zixing nodded. Mo Xiaofei's face turned gloomy. We can keep the young and beautiful ones, but we can only abandon the old ones. But since it's all the women in the village who are cursing, not everyone is willing to help those old people. The cell over there. Speaking of this, Mo Xiaofei's face turned even uglier. The crazy woman I told you about is locked up at the end. But the other cells are used to lock up those old women. Do you know why they're locked up? It's to cover up the fact that the curse doesn't exist. In addition, they're also fodder to feed something raised by the Nagato family. Zixing frowned, but she looked at the passage on the other side, still analyzing Mo Xiaofei's words. And this side is the real source of the Nagato family's income. Mo Xiaofei gritted his teeth. A den of lust. Because of the curse, the young girls in unripe rice village have to accept the fact that they must have intercourse with men to save their lives. When the women in the village have become accustomed to having intercourse with different men, they no longer have scruples in this regard. But in fact, unripe rice village still needs a final fig leaf. So, there's this place with an ironic name, Longevity Underground Palace. Mo Xiaofei led Zixing to the passage here and sneered. The Nagato family told the women in the village that in order to protect the village, they are willing to spend their family's wealth. Every month, they will hire some men from outside the village to prolong the lives of the women in the village so that the women in the village will be grateful. But in fact, those men who come are paid. Zixing exclaimed in a low voice. It was not because of what Mo Xiaofei said, but because Mo Xiaofei quietly opened a door at this time and let her see everything behind the door. It could be described as magnificent. Chapter 702. The lights were brightly lit, but the room was full of unsightly scenes. The men's wanton laughter and the women's obedience. Perhaps the word obedience could not be used to describe the appearance of the women at this moment. They were either lying on the ground like the most docile dogs. The men even held the ropes tied to the women in their hands. The licentious laughter and the moans of bliss intertwined with the whispers of desire. Zixing finally withdrew her gaze from the shock. The men and women in the room were immersed in the vortex of desire at this moment. They did not notice that everything here had been seen by the intruders. Zixing slowly exhaled a turbid breath at this time, frowning. The women inside are a bit abnormal. Their eyes are a bit dull. Are they being controlled? Mo Xiaofei nodded. You can see at first glance. He then smiled bitterly. In fact, when I first saw it, I couldn't even describe my feelings. It's too unsightly. For Mo Xiaofei, who had never held a girl's hand, the shock in his heart was no less than the shock of thunder. Even if he had seen the same scene many times, Mo Xiaofei still couldn't completely ignore it. He shook his head and waved away some messy thoughts in his mind. The Nagato family has a kind of secret medicine. After taking it, people will be in a trance. Well, we also have things like ecstasy in our society. The effect of this secret medicine may be similar. These women in the village won't remember too many things afterwards. They will only vaguely remember that they had intercourse with men before. However, they had no choice but to give in to men in order to survive, so they won't care too much about it. But I still don't understand. Zixing also shook her head and said, I came all the way from the main city of the Kondo family. I have also passed by prosperous places. There are also places for men to have fun in those places. It stands to reason that men outside don't have to come to such a remote place from afar. Mo Xiaofei said, This will return to the question I asked you at the beginning. Do you think that the women in this village are more beautiful? Mo Xiaofei sighed. It is said that there is a strange well in the early rice village. As long as a woman drinks the well water, she will gain unimaginable beauty. The daughter of the woman will also inherit such beauty. Didn't I say that this place was originally built by a monster? For a long time, the villagers of Unripe Rice Village had kept the secret of the well. They were afraid that outsiders would covet it and bring disaster to the village. However, for some unknown reason, this secret was eventually discovered by that monster. That demon also came for this magical well. Back then, it massacred many villagers. Later, the ancestors of the Kondo family brought people to ask for it. That was probably what happened back then, but there was no way to verify the specifics. From what I've heard, the mysterious well was destroyed in the battle with the demons. But because some of the women in the village have already drunk the water from the well, the beautiful physique has also been passed down. After so many years, although it is impossible to restore the situation where every woman is extremely beautiful, at least the girls born in this village are considered good-looking outside. There will even be stunning beauties. I heard that Saburo Nagato's wife was the most beautiful in Unripe Rice Village. Zixing shook her head. Even if it is a beauty, there are many in the outside world. Is there anything special? I'm talking about these women who can attract men from the outside world. Mo Xiaofei said in a flirtatious tone. It is said that the women in this village are a little different. Mo Xiaofei's tone was even more flirtatious. He squinted his eyes. I also caught one of the men and asked. He said that when the women in Unripe Rice Village use, oh no, I mean when doing that kind of thing, it will bring a particularly refreshing feeling. It can make people feel very comfortable. After trying it, they can't stop. Just because of this? Zixing frowned. Mo Xiaofei finally said, there's also a rumor that if you can often have sex with these women, the man may recover his energy and youth. Isn't this place called the Longevity Underground Palace? That's probably the reason. Longevity? Through sex? Zixing looked solemn and then disdainful. She shook her head again. Is there really such a thing? Impossible. Even the existing Zen of Joy lineage can't do it. At most, they can use Yin to supplement Yang. However, it is also an unorthodox method that harms others to benefit oneself. Sooner or later, it will be punished by heaven. What the hell is Zen of Joy? Aren't you taking it too seriously? This is clearly a gimmick made by the Nagato family. Mo Xiaofei did not want to discuss this sensitive topic with a girl too much, especially in such an environment. He shook his head and said, in short, because of the existence of this underground palace, the Nagato family actually made a lot of money secretly. That's right. This Nagato family has started to make this underground palace since they landed in Unripe Rice Village. No, it should have started in the current Master Nagato's generation. The curse of the village began only 7 or 8 years ago. Zixing muttered, by the way, Lord Mo, you just said that there are other things in captivity here. She would not ignore Mo Xiaofei's initial statement about feed, the cell on the other side of the passage. I don't know what that is. Mo Xiaofei said with a hint of fear at this time. Every time I get close to it, I will lose consciousness. No matter how many times I try, I will only feel extreme pain. My body seems to be torn apart by something. I think I should be dead. If he died, he would reincarnate to the beginning again. With an inexplicable fear in his eyes, Mo Xiaofei looked at Zixing and asked, do you want to take a look? No. I'm more interested in seeing the crazy woman that Lord Mo spoke of. Zixing looked at Mo Xiaofei and said, according to the 3 conditions to trigger the reset mentioned by Lord Mo, it is obvious that this woman is the key. Moreover, if Lord Mo can't resist that strange place and loses consciousness, I'm afraid I won't be much better. Instead of this, it's better to choose a safer way to meet this crazy woman who is locked up. It would reset after a certain period of time and after death. However, when encountering the crazy woman in the dungeon, the time would also reset. A year had passed. This was also Mo Xiaofei's direction of thinking, so he sneaked in here many times. Then, let's not delay. Zixing followed Mo Xiaofei's pace again and asked, tell me more about this crazy woman. In addition to being Saburo Nagato's wife, do you have more information about her? Mo Xiaofei said with a strange expression. Speaking of which, this woman is called Narukami Haru. Narukami? Zixing was taken aback. The heroine in the movie seems to be called Narukami Kuna? Is there any special connection between the two? With this thought in mind, Zixing continued to listen to the information Mo Xiaofei inquired. Speaking of which, Narukami Haru was not born in unripe rice village. She was adopted by the previous generation's witch of the shrine on the mountain. I heard that she was originally going to inherit the shrine and become the new witch. But later, she fell in love with Saburo Nagato and gave up the qualification to inherit the shrine. Zixing nodded and asked abruptly, Lord Mo, have you been to the shrine? Mo Xiaofei nodded. Yes, I have been there. At first, I heard from Bamboo that the previous generations which also died under the curse. But now it seems that the death of this, which is probably related to the Nagato family. As for the new which that Bamboo mentioned, I haven't seen it. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. I used 2 resets and waited at the shrine until the time was up. I didn't see anyone until the time was up. That place seems to have been uninhabited for a long time. In short, it gave me a very strange feeling. Lord Mo, there are many doubts in this unripe rice village. It is not normal for you and me to be dragged into this world. Zixing said solemnly. Moreover, meeting you makes me more sure that I am not the only one in the movie theater at that time. You mean everyone present is in this world of Yanwu Yue? Zixing added. Is this movie only played in one movie theater? This is not a blockbuster. Mo Xiaofei bit his finger and said, generally, thriller movies don't have many showtimes. But if you look at it from a national perspective, I'm afraid there are many showtimes. The key is that it's not just a movie. Now that I think about it, the movie Pin Spirit has been in theaters for almost 3 weeks. Wait, if the movie itself can pull people into this strange world, then how could those who finished watching it walk out of the theater unscathed? This is what I don't understand. Maybe I'm thinking in the wrong direction. Zixing shook her head and then stopped in an instant because she had heard some strange sounds. She looked at Mo Xiaofei and saw Mo Xiaofei nodding. It's right in front of us. That crazy woman. Later, you remember to relax your steps as much as possible. After trying so many times, I found that as long as I don't let this crazy woman find out, the reset will not happen. So, the condition to get the reset from the crazy woman should be to be discovered by her. The two quietly poked their heads out from the corner and looked at the crazy woman who was locked up not far away. This crazy woman sat directly on the ground at this time, motionless. She didn't seem to realize that she was being observed. Mo Xiaofei retracted his gaze at this time, took a step back, and shook his head helplessly. That's it. This woman will stay motionless like this for a whole day. What does she eat? I once met Master Nagato, and he personally brought some food over. He just threw it in casually and then left without looking at it. Mo Xiaofei whispered. Usually, she seems to be a servant in this underground palace. This servant can't hear or see. He only knows how to do things. I don't know how he trained him, but I'm afraid they don't come often. So sometimes she even swallows some reptiles, mice, and the like. No matter what, we have to give it a try. Purple Star took a deep breath. Lord Mo, do I remember the name I mentioned to you? Mo Xiaofei was taken aback, then nodded and said, Yes, Jinlong. Is this your name? Speaking of it, I don't seem to know your name yet. He pretended to be relaxed just to ease the atmosphere at this time, because he didn't know what would happen if there was one more person this time. Although it was the first time the goddess came with him. But after all, the goddess was originally from the Yin Wuyue world. Naturally, she was different from the girl Juefeng liked. My name is Zixing. She glanced at Mo Xiaofei. Jinlong, Lord Mo can just treat it as a secret code. Oh, okay. Mo Xiaofei nodded. Then his heart moved. Zixing, where did I hear this name? It's so familiar. He couldn't remember it at once. The nightmare of reincarnation for a year made him a little vague about some things in the past. Zixing? Zixing? Wait, isn't this the young master of the greedy clan that teacher asked me to find? Is it just the same name? Just when Mo Xiaofei was about to ask, Zixing had already walked out and approached the crazy woman. At this time, Mo Xiaofei didn't have time to think about anything else and quickly followed up. The crazy woman in the cell didn't seem to hear the approaching footsteps. She just sat on the ground silently. Zixing and Mo Xiaofei glanced at each other, then looked directly at this crazy woman, Narukami Haru. Narukami Haru moved at this time. Zixing continued, Narukami Haru, right? Narukami Haru moved again at this time, but she still didn't raise her head. Obviously, she had reacted to Zixing's voice. At this time, Zixing approached the fence again, squatted down, and whispered, Mom, I'm Saruko. Saruko, my daughter? Narukami Haru, whose hair was disheveled, slowly raised his head at this time. His eyes that seemed to be about to split opened even wider at this time, staring at Zixing outside the fence in a daze. Every time Narukami Haru found him, he would feel dizzy and reset to daytime in an instant. But this time, this feeling of dizziness didn't appear this time. Mo Xiaofei looked at Narukami Haru's appearance at this time in disbelief. Although she was still a little crazy, she was obviously not crazy. She even kept repeating the name Saruko as if she was recalling something. Mother, it's me, Saruko. Zixing continued softly. Saruko, finally found you. Mother, I missed you so much. Her voice and expression changed. Chapter 703. Hidden within the mountain was a magnificent palace. A powerful monster called Jiotun lived here. The name of Shutendaji caused all the people in the nearby towns to be terrified, not only because of Shutendaji's strength, but also because of Shutendaji's ferocity. It was said that this Shutendaji loved to devour the flesh and blood of living people, especially the flesh and blood of young and pure women. Everyone in the vicinity was in a state of panic. However, many powerful samurai, monks, and even mysterious yin-yang masters came to ask for it. In the end, none of them returned, becoming food for Shutendaji and his subordinates. Everything within a 50-kilometer radius was shrouded in the shadow of this powerful monster, but that seemed to be the end of it. That was because the powerful demon Shutendaji that was feared by the commoners and even the samurai was currently showing a pained expression. Shutendaji liked to transform into a beautiful man to seduce young girls, but right now, this beautiful face of his was almost distorted. Shutendaji grabbed his own neck in pain as his body was lifted up high by something. It was the hand of a human warrior. Apart from the pain, Shutendaji's eyes were filled with disbelief. It did not believe that a human warrior could possess such power. However, when it accidentally saw the shadow of the human warrior on the wall that was elongated by the candlelight, it had a trace of understanding in its heart. On top of the wall, a huge shadow was wantonly swaying. It was a monster with 8 huge heads. Hakata. Shutendaji didn't remember to say this name that was taboo in Yin Wuyue's world, a name that even demons feared. At this moment, a large amount of blood splattered onto the wall, signifying that the evil Shutendaji's life had come to an end. The 8-headed monster on the wall danced even more crazily. When everything returned to normal, the human warrior casually sat on the ground, licked his lips, and a purple light flashed in his eyes. This Shutendaji isn't bad. At least he helped me recover some of my strength. Now that I think about it, the user of the clear sable sword didn't seem to care. Samurai. Hakata furrowed its brows and pondered over the course of the battle. At the beginning, when it had just emerged, its strength was at its lowest, and it had not even fully awakened its consciousness. It had only sensed the power of Zhang Lu's Emperor's sword and thought back to the great disaster that had befallen the Shangliu clan in Kelowna, which was why it had fled in panic. However, now that he was awake, he felt that although the clear sable sword was not bad, it was not as powerful as when it had forced the Shangliu clan into a desperate situation. The Hakata serpent did not know why the clear sable sword had changed owners, nor why it had come to this remote fragment world that had nothing to do with Kelowna. But it probably had something to do with the hidden dangers of this fragment world, because it was once the owner of Yin Wuyue's world's general authority. At that time, it entered this fragment world by chance and directly took half of Yen Wuyue's world from Izanagi and Izanami of the Sky Jade Pillar. It became a huge disaster that could destroy the entire Yen Wuyue's world. It was even called the Snake of Destruction. Despite this, Hakata's serpent and Izanagi and Izanami of Yadano could not do anything to each other. If they continued to fight like this, the world fragment that could evolve into a world would eventually be obliterated. When both sides could not get any benefits, they had reached a tacit understanding of non-aggression. However, as of now, Hakata's serpent, who had broken the seal and came back again, had to admit that it was too conceited and arrogant at that time. Otherwise, it would not let Susanoo, one of the three noble sons, succeed and be sealed in the Tatsuka sword. Damn it! Even if Susanoo has the Tatsuka sword, he can just crush him easily. If it weren't for Izanagi and Izanami secretly using the world's omnipotence to restrict me that day, how could I succeed? Every time it thought of the moment when it was sealed, Hakata, serpent, felt indescribable regret. Wasn't it? Originally, in Yen Wuyue's world, it was a supreme being with half of the world's authority, living a carefree life. However, because of its greed, it was sealed for many years, and even its authority was taken away. However, this time, the world authority has been divided again, as the autarch who once possessed half of the authority of this world. Even if it was taken away, it was still extremely sensitive to such things. In fact, because half of the authority had been completely refined by it. Even if it was taken away later on, there was still some sort of connection in the unseen world. It seems that Yen Wuyue has ushered in an intruder like me after all. Hakata, serpent, sat in the palace that originally belonged to Shitendaji. It lowered its eyebrows and sneered, "It's best that you two fight to the death so that I can enjoy the benefits. But first, what it had to do was to restore more power as soon as possible. The entrance to the country of darkness is nearby." Hakata, serpent, pondered for a while. Tsukuyami is one of the three noble sons and was given a part of the authority. This part of the authority is obviously split from the part that was taken away from me. At this time, the aura at the entrance of the country of darkness was surging and expanding wildly. Such a big movement naturally couldn't be hidden from Hakata's serpent's senses. It narrowed its eyes. It seems that my opportunity has come again. Kelowna, I'll be back again. After I master the fragments of this world and evolve a world that belongs to me completely, there's nothing to be afraid of. According to legend, only after possessing a world that belonged to oneself could one transcend from a huge cage. To call a crazy woman mom, Mo Xiaofei knew that he couldn't do such a thing. Or rather, he didn't even consider doing it. "Madam, how can your daughter be a man?" As a man with a red background, Mo Xiaofei, who never had the hobby of dressing up as a pink joystick, subconsciously didn't think of such an operation. However, it seemed that he didn't feel dizzy this time. Seeing that Narukami Haru seemed to be immersed in some kind of memory under Zixing's call, Mo Xiaofei's heartbeat accelerated subconsciously. After a day and a year of reincarnation, there was finally some progress. "Tsuruko, my daughter." Narukami Haru raised her head abruptly, grabbing the fence with both hands. Her entire face seemed to be squeezing out of the gap of the fence. She was so forceful. Although Mo Xiaofei had seen Narukami Haru's terrifying and ferocious face many times, he still felt palpitations at this time. It was the first time that Narukami Haru had such a reaction. "You're not my daughter. You're a monster. You're a monster. Go faster. Monster, go faster. Don't come close to me. Don't come close to me." Narukami Haru suddenly showed a horrified expression at this time. She shivered, squatted on the ground, and hugged her head with both hands. "Go away. Go away." Zixing subconsciously looked up at Mo Xiaofei, only to see him shaking his head in doubt. She frowned and continued to look at Narukami Haru, calling softly, "Mother, what's wrong with me? Am I a monster? I'm your daughter, Tsuruko Nagato." "Mother, don't you recognize me?" "Nagato. Monster. Nagato. Narukami Haru's reaction at this moment was even more intense. She screamed suddenly, "Please, please, don't let me give birth to this monster. Don't. I'll do anything. Don't. Don't." After letting out a twisted cry, Narukami Haru actually tried to ram himself into the wall crazily. Separated by the fence, Imo, Xiaofei, and Zixing, who had lost their strength, obviously couldn't stop all this. However, Narukami Haru's body was suddenly pulled by something, and she didn't really crash into the wall. It turned out that her ankles were tied with an iron chain. Under the cover of the kimono, Imo Xiaofei didn't notice this many times. Narukami Haru frantically stretched out her hands, trying to grab the stone wall. Her fingers directly broke the wall when she grabbed it, and a line of blood flowed on the wall, but it didn't seem painful. With another scream, Narukami Haru suddenly fell to the ground, motionless, but her chest was still moving slightly. She must have fainted due to excessive stimulation. I have never encountered such a situation. Imo Xiaofei took a deep breath. For the first time, I heard her say so much, and she even wanted to commit suicide. Zixing nodded, then stood up. Anyway, at least Narukami Haru spoke. "Lord Imo, it seems that this idea is right. We have contacted her, and she is still fine now. In other words, your reincarnation may have been lifted." Imo Xiaofei quietly clenched his fists. Don't be fooled by Zixing's understatement. That was only because she had never experienced the pain of not having a single friend by her side for a day. But in any case, with such progress, Imo Xiaofei did have a kind of joy like falling from the sky. "Maybe what you said is true." He suddenly became enraptured. "In this case, we may successfully find a clue and even solve the mystery of Unripe Rice Village. By the way, Narukami Haru is unconscious. We should leave here temporarily. I'm afraid the banquet is about to end. Master Nagato will definitely come back here. If we don't reset, he will know that the guard was knocked out. I'm afraid he will become." "Zixing, are you okay?" Zixing didn't look at him at this time. She just looked behind him without saying a word. Imo Xiaofei looked back subconsciously. At the end of the passageway, at the corner where they had come from, something suddenly flashed past. In the silence, that thing flashed by. It was too fast. It was like a ghost. Imo Xiaofei blinked his eyes, trying to see what it was, but there was no one in front of him. Plop! At this moment, Madame Purple Star fell directly beside him. Imo Xiaofei opened his mouth and looked back again. A face that was countless times more terrifying than Narukami Haru appeared directly in front of him. It was too close. It was as if it was in front of his nose. The eyes were completely dark, and he couldn't see any sclera. Was it smiling? A feeling of dizziness came. Imo Xiaofei was very familiar with this feeling. Reset. "No!" he roared. The pressure that had accumulated for a year and almost caused his sanity to collapse completely overwhelmed his nerves at this moment. He instinctively stretched out his hand unwillingly, wanting to grab this terrifying face. No. Finally, he fell to the ground. Hope and despair alternated at this moment. It was as if he had fallen from heaven to the depths of hell. When he woke up again, there was a comfortable temperature around him. The sunlight was softly wrapping Imo Xiaofei's body. In front of him, a girl carrying a basket was walking on the path with her head down with a heavy heart. Imo Xiaofei grabbed his hair and knelt on the road weakly. Then he punched fiercely. Punch after punch. It was as if he would never tire, even if he had already smashed his own fist until it was bleeding. He could only relieve the sense of powerlessness caused by resetting time in this way. What's wrong with you?" The girl came in front of him and looked at him in amazement. Imo Xiaofei slowly raised his head. His eyes were unfocused. He suddenly roared, "Get lost!" The girl was frightened and stepped back 2 steps. She even accidentally fell to the ground. But she quickly scrambled to her feet and fled in terror. Looking at the girl in front of him, looking at Bamboo leaving like this, Imo Xiaofei finally took a deep breath and murmured, "Sorry, I didn't mean it." After a long time, Imo Xiaofei, stood up dejectedly and looked at a certain place on the hillside. He found a carriage, escorted by more than a dozen G2, slowly driving over. It was Zixing. She really is. Mo Xiaofei gritted his teeth. I can't give up on myself. Seeing the appearance of Zixing, Mo Xiaofei once again rekindled a trace of faith. Under the cherry tree, looking at the kimono girl, Meiji, who was wrapped in a gray and black mist, Eric's mouth curved. The quality is really good. The alternation of hope and despair. The faith can be rekindled immediately after being broken again and again. Such a strong will is rare. It's so rare. If possible, I really want her to be my stable food supply. Finally, the trace of mist gradually dispersed from Meiji's body. Meiji slowly opened her eyes. Eric smiled. How do you feel? It's done. Meiji replied softly. Eric nodded and waved his hand again. More gray mist gushed out from all directions. Then eat more, my Meiji. Meiji closed her eyes again, letting the gray mist enter her body. But apparently, she didn't enjoy it. Instead, she seemed to be enduring this great pain. Sir Erex, I can still accommodate more. Please give me more. Really a perfect vessel. Erex showed a devilish smile again, but when he saw the scar on Meiji's throat, the smile quickly disappeared. This was the scar left by the servant girl of the club.